Hi, good evening, everybody. It's 7:39. I apologize for lateness. I got stuck and got rerouted. Briarcliff on 9-8 is flooded. So we had to get rerouted. So we're starting a little late. And we're going to do the pledge and then get to the meeting.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Let's see what we got. We're doing the historian is on, so we're doing the street naming first. I don't think there are do you guys have announcements? Oh, please. Yeah, go ahead. You're right. You did write to me. You guys have anything?
Thought it bore mentioning that 200 years ago today, several boatloads of prisoners from Auburn Prison upstate arrived at the shores of the village of Sing Sing with their guards and a warden named Elam Lins. And they got off the boats and they set up camp and they began to build what we now call Sing Sing Correctional Facility. So that was 200 years ago today. And it only took a few months to finish the first level, and at which point they moved out of their tents and into the cells that they had built for themselves. They ultimately built 6 stories. It was supposed to be 4, but they needed to make it bigger. And the people in Newgate prison in the village, Newgate was closed. It was our first prison, 1790s or earlier. And they were brought up the river to the new prison in Sing Sing, though it was called Mount Pleasant. So that was, and obviously still here, different form. It was rebuilt in the 20s, and that prison is in itself. The new prison is now 100 years old. So, of course, we are called Ossining because the village changed its name to separate itself from the Sing Sing prison. So our relationship and our continues now to this day. So that's an auspicious day in history for us.
I like your posts actually about the, with the picture and everything on there. I wanted to, I'm just looking for the exact times and everything. I should know this by now. It's a little early, but still Memorial Day is not that far off. And Ossining Vets always put on a very nice parade. And then at the park, we do they do, not we do, but they do a very nice presentation, which includes members of the community in honor of Memorial Day. I have it. I actually sent it around, but now I can't find it. So here's his letter. So it's from Michael G. O'Connor. The Central Committee of Organized War Veterans will have on Monday, May 26th, a Memorial Day celebration. It starts with the parade at 9:30, which steps off at Croton Avenue and Callum Avenue and proceeds down to Nelson Park, where our Parks Department does a gorgeous job of setting everything up with the flags, etc. It's actually a very moving celebratory event. So I hope every member of the community comes out in honor of Memorial Day. We'll be there. So we hope to see everyone else there. I think I'm just going to mention the bike program. All the bikes are now in their places around the village and in neighboring communities, and you can take the e-bikes between the communities. Maddie Sahaj has done a lot of work on making sure, and I saw Tarrytown's having a press conference over it. So they're doing that. They could also be ridden on the Aqueduct Trail, for those of you that may or may not be familiar, because that trail actually goes through many of the river towns. And if you work at Phelps, you could take the bike there, go to work, come back later on. You don't need to use a car. So I think that will be helpful. And when is Bike Day? Because that was in my newsletter. Do you remember? Jamie wrote. Jamie, when's Bike Day?
Friday, Bike to Work Day.
Friday. So this Friday, there's a movement to use more bikes, less fossil fuels, fewer cars, et cetera, for those of you, if it's not raining, that can use e-bikes do count. So it's all good. Good. We're going to get going with the meeting.
Hey, good evening, everyone. First on our agenda, we have our village historian, Joyce Chirac-Cole, who's with us via Zoom tonight. And she is going to provide a report on a request that we have for an honorary street renaming for Captain Lewis Brady. And this would be for the corner of Revolutionary Road and Rockledge Avenue. So I'd like to turn it over to Joyce. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is a fun part of my job is doing these street namings. It's fun
Oh,
digging.
stop it. All parts of your job are fun. Come on.
They really are, Mayor. Um, so Captain Lewis Brady, we knew that his father was enslaved by George Washington. We knew that he escaped slavery somehow and ended up in our community, but it wasn't until the discovery of an 1880 interview about his life that we discovered his trail here and what he ended up doing in our community. So that's what I'll talk about today, briefly, because you have the report. But Captain Lewis Brady was actually born Noah. He had a dispute with his enslaver and changed his name to Lewis. He eventually he served in the War of 1812 with his enslaver as a body servant. So he did not get credit for that service, but he was there. He was at George Washington's funeral. He did eventually escape enslavement, and he left behind each state. He went through Pennsylvania. He was in Dover, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Tarrytown, and then finally Ossining. After plotting on a map his trail and overlaying it over Underground Railroad maps, he was taking one of the routes on the Underground Railroad to our community, and he was helped by the Quakers. And one of the Quakers that helped him was one of the most prominent members of Ossining that helped, James Knowlton, and he was a Quaker as well. When he arrived in this community in 1836, he did purchase his house in cash. The house is still in Sparta today, for 14 Rockledge Avenue. They called him Captain Lewis Brady because of his occupation. He was an oysterman. He ran a business. He had a sloop. He contributed to the economy of this community through his oyster business. He owned his home. He welcomed European immigrants into his house so they can settle in and find their own housing, which I found to be quite interesting in 1836, when we're just out of slavery in New York ourselves, in 1827, that 1836. And just a few years later, he's welcoming European settlers of this country immigrants in to settle into this country. So Captain Lewis Brady's story is incredible. He's a remarkable man because he has touched so many points of American history and really contributed richly to the story of Ossining, because now we have a person that we have proven has utilized the system of the Underground Railroad, and he contributed to the economy, and he contributed to our historic Sparta district. And he is the oldest person interred at historic Sparta Cemetery. He passed away when he was 108 years old.
108. Oh,
108.
okay. And the purpose of you presenting this to us, if you don't mind, putting it in context for those that may not.
Absolutely. So residents or organizations can ask for a street to be renamed, an honorary street naming. And from Karen, I will be directed by you, the board, to do a historical narrative on the person. And then I report to you as I am doing this evening. So the Jug Tavern asked for an honorary street naming of Captain Lewis Brady to actually accompany a very big event that's happening.
Right.
We were able to find descendants of Captain Lewis Brady, and they will be here in June.
Right. That's the context, is that there's a process in place for naming things, including and especially streets. The historian does the research and the board has to approve it or not. And June, I know I'm out of town that day, right? I know you can reschedule it because I love these things, but okay. But there's a whole bunch of events, and we'll be talking more about that they're doing in honor that is being done by that neighborhood, actually. and that nonprofit, because I think they're a nonprofit. Jug Tavern's a nonprofit, right? Organization. So do we have questions? Do we have comments? Do we know? I mean, we don't vote. It's a work session, so not necessarily a vote, but more of a, we're good? You have no questions. You have no questions? Everybody's good? Okay, so we're getting a thumbs up for next week
Next week will be to call for the public hearing.
for the public hearing,
Public
excuse
hearing
me.
will be June 4th, and we will slightly deviate from our usual process. The board will also be asked to approve the naming that night so
Because
that
they
it will
need
be
to
in
do it in
time for the
time.
June 7th
Yeah,
event.
because they'll have to do it in time. And Karen, just so I don't forget, we'll need a proclamation since I'm not going to be around. We just want to make sure that all of that gets done. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sure. I'm just saying, and I'm sure somebody from staff, but it's like if I don't remember to do it now, and just so, and Jamie's on, so she'll know, I might as well get the proclamation going. So everything's ready because we're cutting it a little close here. And there's a whole bunch of events going on and they're counting on certain things. Okay,
Okay, thank you so much, Joyce. And now moving on to our next agenda item.
Excuse me, one more. Joyce, everything's going well with the banner program for the vets?
Yes,
That's another program you are helping with or running with, et cetera.
yes, it looks beautiful. They're going
That's
up. and
awesome. Yeah.
Families are happy. Yes,
But the date on that at the library is,
24.
right,
Are they going up on Highland Avenue this year?
Yes, they're already on one side. They're on both sides now. So yes, they're already.
Okay, no, they look good
Yeah.
there.
I
Yeah.
saw
And
that
it-
earlier, Dina.
it's
Yeah.
just Highland Avenue or there are arteries off of Highland. It's
Oh,
just,
no, it's all high.
Croton.
It went from Atria is the first one and it ends at the Light and Arcadian and goes back up the other
oh,
way.
okay,
Right.
like a triangle, sort of. Okay.
Right.
Great. I haven't been paying attention. Thank you.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for everything, historian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. So next on our agenda, we are going to be speaking about LoSAP, which is a length of service award program for volunteer firefighters, of which there are many here tonight in our audience. This is something that we've worked very closely with a committee from the fire department led by Mike Aurora. And I want to really say that a lot of time and effort went into it. The mayor was involved in the planning of this over several months now. And also enormous amount of effort from Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahaj and our Treasurer Dale Brennan to really work this out so that we can do the best that we can for our volunteer firefighters. So a tremendous amount of work went into this from the fire department as well as the board and the staff to come up with we have a series of, we ran the numbers and there's different options. This was all provided in a memo to the board, which Maddie and Dale will review in more detail tonight for discussion. It's an important program. It's one we take very seriously. It's also a program that is a little time sensitive here because we do need to understand what level of funding we're proposing so that we can get this on a referendum for the November ballot. This is subject to referendum, so it will be on the November ballot. So the public will vote on this. But that said, I would like to turn it over to Maddie and Dale to discuss, really give an overview of the memo that was sent, and then open it up for questions and discussion with the Board of Trustees.
Before you start, I just want to put on public record that trustee Fritchie is a member of the fire department and has recused himself from conversations and of course voting on this matter.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Board. So as Karen mentioned, we have been working on this for quite a while. I believe Mr. Aurora came to present to us in 2023 for the first time. So everybody, or almost everybody in this room or at this day has got a crash course in the LoSAP program at that point. As I think everybody who has been following along can realize, because we're trying to do it right when we do it, there's been a lot of legwork that I think probably other communities, when they started it many decades ago, probably did not anticipate at the time. So we're trying to sort of learn from other people's false steps. But there's a lot of different components. And so going into 2025, the board had budgeted for the technology component. Jamie, would you mind bringing the memo up on the screen when you have a moment, please? So there are the way that Dale and I are sort of looking at it, now that we've had a chance to sort of review the preliminary points values, to sort of wrap our head around the actuarial side of things, to speak with the vendors that have been suggested by the LoSAP committee. We've sort of divided it into two different chunks. So the variable cost is the chunk that we're going to talk about second. But when we talk about the fixed costs, there are a bunch of things that we need to buy and things that we need to budget for that we're going to need to have no matter at what level the community decides to fund this program. So for example, a lot of our technology for this needed to be revved up a little bit. We had to buy a new server. We needed to buy a complement of new tablets. We're going to need biometric finger readers, kiosks, all that kind of stuff. So Mr. Aurora is really helpful in helping us sort of get to the bottom and sort of pare down that number to what actually was necessary. So as you can see here under technology, there's a couple different components. So not talking about the upfront costs, because we already know that we can pay those out of fund balance. It's, you know, a reasonable chunk of money that, again, the board has budgeted in 2025. But when we talk about ongoing costs for technology, we have the biometric software and hardware components, the biometric subscription, the annual fixed, not finer, finger reader warranty, and then tablets and servers. In addition, the board had some concerns about how much village resource would need to go into this program. And again, because we haven't done this before, we don't really know yet. So we're trying to give conservative estimates to make sure that we're actually measuring what this program is actually going to look like. So we budgeted for about $15,000 a year in staff time from the finance office. So that's not an increase to the budget necessarily. That's just an offset of what the finance department might otherwise be doing. So for folks who don't know, we do the town and the village, accounting, payroll, all of that in-house. So that would be up to those folks, and then folks from IT to sort of help troubleshoot things that might come up along the course of this program. So that was the number that we came up with as a, you know, blended rate estimates, $15,000 a year. The chief stipend I'll get back to in a minute because there's been some more discussions on that. But then the final component of the fixed cost is consultant services. So Penflex is the vendor that basically does the management of the program for the fire department. They charge an $8,000 a year fee. There's wealth management fees, which actually goes down every year depending on how much money is in the account. And then we also budgeted for outside counsel. So outside counsel, again, because this is somewhat new to us, we're not really clear on what the dispute process would be. So if, for example, somebody believes that they actually did make their 50 points for the year, do I need to go through the points? Is everyone like pretty good on all? I see a lot of nods. Okay. So if somebody says, no, I actually did make my 50 points for the year, I don't think your records are correct, and there was a legal matter to attend to, the board was very clear that they wanted money budgeted for that as well. Hopefully that'll never happen because we're keeping very good records with our biometrics and everything else. But we do have a budgeted amount in for that. So the chief stipend is something that I'm going to kick to Dale just very quickly. So when we first started to learn about this program, I think back in 2024, when we first started digging into this, there is an opinion from the New York State Department of Labor that says that anyone who's participating in a volunteer fire department cannot be paid because it's a volunteer fire department. As many in this room know, your chiefs who do an incredible amount of work, they're on call 24/7, 365, they get a small stipend every year in the village's operating budget. So basically, the Department of Labor's opinion was that those two things might be in conflict if we started a LoSAP program. So we actually looked at the numbers by taking that amount completely out of the budget to see what it would look like if we cut the chief stipend completely. But we've had some more conversations with different communities that are in the area that they have capped it at, I think, Dale, $6,000.
Yes, that's correct. Because there was another opinion that was also put out in regards to it, that nominal definition would equate to basically anything 20% or below what a actual salary of a paid position would be. So I think that was, seems to be like a safe number, so to speak.
And, just for the record, I think, we're not talking about a decrease of very much more than, I think, $3,000. I think top chief, you guys might know off the top of your head more than I, still under $10,000, right? So to go even from 10 to 6, it's about a
They're 9,000.
40% reduction.
I think they're at 9.
Pardon?
We had this conversation. I think they're at 9.
Okay, well, I think there's a tiered system, right? So when you're the top chief, you get just a little bit more. So that is the fixed cost scenario. So just keep that number in mind when we talk about the next part, which is the variable cost. So when Mr. Aurora presented to the board originally, the OFD LoSAP committee had done an awful lot of work. And so thank you to everyone in this room who participated in that process. I can speak from personal experience that it's a nightmare. So the plan that was recommended by the committee was as follows: a defined benefit plan as opposed to defined contribution. And defined benefit means once you reach the entitlement age, you get a check every month then for the rest of your life. Instead of at retirement, you get a lump sum check and you get sent on your way. It was recommended that we do a 40-year maximum contribution, an entitlement age of 65, $20 per member per month, and a 5-year look back. So it's mainly the two bottom things that have sort of been the crux of our analysis here. For obvious reasons, the defined benefit plan was preferable. 40-year max contribution and entitlement age of 65 is more or less the standard. Again, we've spoken to a lot of our peers throughout Westchester County about what they're doing. So those numbers seem pretty spot on. It was the $20 and the 5-year look back that were really the hinges that we really needed to get into. Jamie, can you scroll down a little bit further? Dale, if you want to stop me and interject, please just yell. I know you can. No, not going to yell. Okay. So when we had talked about this with the board in 2024, talking about building the language for the referendum, which is another whole part of this process, while it was originally anticipated, because that was the recommendation of the LoSAP committee, that we would do $20 per member per month to get started. The board has also asked us to look at the $10 and $15 per member per month as a start, which we did. So we had to go back to PenFlex, the vendor, with an updated census, which again, OFD was very helpful in putting together. So you can see that little chart here about based on, I think it was 2024 numbers, the full year, what it would look like for folks who of the 475, 460, who of the active roster would potentially, based on past actions, qualify for LoSAP in 2025. So pre-EA means folks who are under the age of 65, because that's EA entitlement age. Post-EA are members of the fire department who would qualify who are greater than 65 years of age. So you see going through the tally, there are 76 folks in both categories, across both categories, who pretty definitely make it. And then 28 maybes, 25 under 65 and 3 over 65. So the number we were working with here was 104. And so just for the board, this went down quite a bit since the time we did the census the last time, but the number is actually down twice, because what we did to be extra conservative the last go round was we added a 20% multiplier onto the numbers that we got from OFD. What I think maybe we neglected to realize was that the maybes are almost that 20% buffer anyway, right?
Okay.
The 20% buffer on the 76. So we were pretty comfortable with these numbers as they were. Jamie, if you could scroll down a little bit further. So we're using that number 104. And this was something that PenFlex helped us to put together. These are obviously round figures, and I just want a giant asterisk. This is all an estimate, because we might go forward and everyone might hit lotto and not want to do this anymore. There might be 1 million people who decide, hey, Ossing's a great place to be in the fire department, as it is. And the membership's going to double. So we don't really know. But based on the 2024 census that we got from you all, this is what it looks like. So let's start with the $20 multiplier. So again, this is $20 per member per month.
So I know you're doing this presentation like you're talking to the audience in this room rather than to the board or the public. But I'm just going to put it in context. So when somebody sees this, there's a committee, and this all came from the fire departments. So the numbers you're using is what was given to you.
So the $20, the $15, and the $10 level. Jamie, if you scroll down just a tad more. Okay. So let's talk about the first bullet under each one. So the 187,000, the 140,250, and the 93,500. That would be the second thing that we talked about. So not the fixed, that's the flexible. So that's the part that's based on the roster, which could change at any time. It's the second bullet that we really want to pay attention to in terms of what's the impact on the village's operating budget on an ongoing basis. So for $20 per member per month, including the flexible and fixed cost, we're looking at just over $245,000 added to the village budget. So that's a budget line item that does not exist today that would exist for the 2026 budget. Obviously, as the board is aware, we have a 2% tax cap that we have to abide by, unless the board wants to go through the process of breaking the tax cap. And so doing $20 per member per month before we add anything else to the 2026 operating budget from 2025 would eat up about 50% of that tax cap. So just to set context, as you can go through, it gets a little bit lower. Obviously, if you go to 15, if you go to 10, so it's about 245, 200, and 150, just for orders of magnitude. Can I stop here in case there's any questions on that element before we talk about the buyback?
I think that's a good idea also for Dale to, Dale, anything? Okay.
I think in part of it, because we're talking in terms of the tax cap proper, which the fixed element is basically about 500,000. We're allowed to increase our tax warrant amount for the year. Then we do get certain, like a growth factor, which is a small, dollar figure. If there is ERS or PFRS inclusions also into the tax cap, which sometimes happens, that can increase the tax cap amount as well. But those increases are really coming down because the offset is our rate to those retirement system rates has increasing the expenses on the other side. So it's really just a credit towards that. In actuality, because we had budgeted in the operating account in 2025 for some of the hardware, software items, that amount is already rolled into our operating budget. So in theory, that amount, of the 245, about 100,000 is already included because it was included for the startup portion of 2025's costs.
Right. So I just want to put that in context for the record, and not necessarily for the audience here who might know this. So the board made a big decision. The board assumed that this will be going forward in sub shape. That one of the issues is whether the board even recommends having LoSAP and Ossining at this point in time. For some communities, it doesn't even make the agenda, and for others, it's a slam dunk, and then there's everybody else in the middle. This board decided that we believe that the community, once we put the numbers together and it's reasonable numbers, will take our recommendation, because it has to go on the election ballot as a referendum, like when you flip over your ballots, and that the community will support what the board puts forward. Doesn't always happen that way, but we hope. So we actually bought upfront equipment and computers that we hope could be used for other things, but frankly, so when a budgeting person says, don't worry, we've already spent $100,000 in 25, it's because the board actually bought things up front. Otherwise, if this gets approved by the public in November, we will be 6 months to a year behind in buying the equipment that can make this thing happen. So we are hopeful that whatever we decide to put forward, that the public will see that we thought it out, that we were careful about it, but we've already invested in, frankly, we don't do this very often. We don't buy things that are for future hopeful, environments. That's not what the board does. And we did. So when Dale talks about the numbers and that we paid, that's a big gamble on the community saying yes on the referendum. If the community, as they had in the last election, says no to something, we are going to have to explain why we invested in materials and capital that some of which cannot be used for other items. So I just want to make it clear, and I think the team that's sitting in front of me knows that I've sat in some of the meetings. I don't know if it's many or most, but I've sat in enough and many. I said from day one that I want this to be a yes, that I would like the board to move forward because that's the first major hurdle. Now we're really looking at the numbers that we believe is fair to both the fire departments, our staff, and the community at large. So I just want to put things in context because people do look at these when we play them back 6 months from now or a year from now. And when somebody says, why did you do this and why did you do that? We will refer them to this meeting and say, here's the work session and this is the reason we did certain things. I just want to put some things in context. Also because Trustee Yost is, while he reads everything, is a relatively new trustee, even though he's been a member of this community for, I don't know, what, 30 years, 25 years. So did you just age a lot while on this job or? So, go ahead. I just wanted to have context for the record.
Sure. So I don't know if you'd like me to conclude by talking about the look back or if you want to discuss this portion first.
I'm going to leave it up to the board. You guys want to get the whole piece? We've discussed this before. You rather do the whole thing, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's only
That's usually what we
only
like.
Another minute or two.
Yeah, we have questions, but because this is a little different than what the board saw at the last iteration.
Right. So a piece of information that we used, or I should say PenFlick used, and that we sort of combed through to determine the look back was also the census. So on the census was not just everybody who's part of the active role, it was also using the OFD's in-house records. Who would have hit LoSAP, who would have gotten the 50 points over the last 4 or 5 years, something like that. And if the look back were available, a 5-year look back, who would qualify and for how many years. So again, for nearly 500 people, it is a pretty scant handful of folks who would qualify for the look back at any level. But there's about a 50-50 split. So among those who would qualify for the look back at all, about half would get the full 5 years if 5 years was offered. And then the other half, if they got anything at all, would get about a year or two. So it's about a 50-50 split. The look back is something that Dale has determined we would be paying out of general fund balance, basically for the same reason I just described. So if we spread out, Jamie, if you go to the next page again, I'm sorry, those lump sum amounts, and again, this is broken down by 20, 15, and 10. If you were to spread out that lump sum across the operating budget for what's recommended as 10 years, we would get much closer to the tax cap ceiling. So it is not advised that we pay it the way that PenFlex typically would like it paid. Dale had said to the folks at PenFlex that if we do this, it would have to be in a lump sum. Dale, is there anything you want to add on that?
I'm going to add something here. I'm going to say I think for many of you that know me, without a doubt, I'm not only blunt, but I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening, right? And what we have to think about when we do things so that we don't have rumors and we don't have all the other things that go on. And I'll just say it. By now, we had hoped that the PBA negotiation would be complete and that we had a good sense of where we are because that negotiation affects a tax cap. If this equals 50% on one scenario and theirs equals more than 50%, we have a problem. When you sit in these chairs, the first thing you learn within the first 6 months of being a trustee, and it's not so obvious, is that everything is one big domino game. Every domino affects the others. You can't make decisions by department and you can't make decisions by a staff person or by any one element. And so we have not completed that transaction. And so we're sitting here with due dates coming up where we, as a board, there are very few boards that will ever go beyond the tax cap, ever. It's bad financial systems. And to stay within that tax cap, if this thing equals 50 or more in the PBA, which we don't know what it's going to equal, but it's coming in realistically at a higher rate, we have a problem. And we have a timing problem. We can't wait now. We thought we'd be done. We hope to be done. We can't wait. Because if we wait, we won't get this on a referendum. What wasn't described, because I'm not sure how important it is, there are milestones that have to be hit. You have to have certain things done by this month, certain things done by next month. And if you miss it, it's not like school that you can go to the professor and cry, or your teacher that, you know, your dog ate your homework and you want to do it again. You miss the deadline, you're done till next year. We don't want this to go into next year. That's not our intention. And so the board is caught right now, and we're the only ones that can vote on budgets, period, end of conversation. And so we're caught in an awkward situation right now that we hoped would not be the case. So when we say tax cap, for us, it's a serious thing right now. That ties our hands a little bit of what we can do, and the clock keeps ticking in both scenarios. And that doesn't include all the other things we have to spend money on and all the other expenses that go on that we may or may not have predicted. But these are two big chunks. As you heard, one takes up at least 50%, this piece, and then there's the other one. So again, I feel there's importance to understanding how decisions are made so that people understand it.
Thank you, Mayor. I can pretty much wrap it up at this point. Like I said, I'll punt to Dale in case there's anything I missed. But the very good news is, for everyone in this room, is that we've done a lot of work. We have done a huge amount of work on this. Obviously, a very, very nice trail of breadcrumbs was left by Mr. Aurora for us to sort of pick up on. But I think we are at a point now where not only do we understand it fully and we understand what our options are, we also know what steps we need to take next once the board, you know, sort of gives the green light. So just in summary, the next steps need to be whatever the board decides. We have to go to PenFlex, which again is the vendor who's going to write the resolution that's going to go on the referendum that folks are going to flip over their ballot to read. We have to go back to the points calculation, because I understand the committee had a couple small tweaks to what they recommended, which we reviewed and we'll share back with the board. And then finally, the next part is let the community have their say. So we're very close, and I think that's a testament, you know, to not only the work that's happened behind the scenes, but also the work of this board. Because again, this is not a breeze to understand. This was complicated even for a nerd like me who sort of thrives in this environment. So, Dale, I'll turn it to you in case there's anything obvious that I missed that you want to bring up.
No, I think you did it fabulously.
Wow, gold star from the treasurer. I'll take it. All right. Thank you.
There are the other documents on here that I'm looking at.
Yep, there's 3 documents in the
Well, is there a
agenda.
reason we need to look at any of them? Because I'm looking on here. It's
So
hard for me to read that.
that's fine.
so-
Jamie, can you go to the second
You
document
don't
in the
have to
agenda?
tell me if we have to, if there's a reason to look at it. I don't want to waste time. It's like it's 100 degrees in here.
No? Okay. So let's not waste time and go through it, but just in case anyone's following along at home, the second thing in the agenda is the cost schedule. So basically, after 2025, what does the forecast look like for 10 years, including all of those fixed and flexible costs we mentioned? And then the final portion is the thing that was sort of the hardest for me to wrap my head around, because I'm not a technology geek. This is sort of helping us to calculate what goes into the annual operating cost for the biometric equipment, because it was not obvious to me. So I figured it must not be obvious to anybody else. So we don't have to go through it. Certainly, that's just sort of guiding information for the conversation.
I'm going to wait. I don't know if there's a problem. Stuart, comment, question, or you guys are just, okay. Just want to make sure. Okay. Sorry. I know. Oh, did you want to start? I'm going to start on my left and then go to my right. Problem?
Just 1,000 degrees.
Well, I went with 100, but okay, go ahead.
So one, first of all, thanks. I guess like the mayor said, I've been following it a little bit just through the public meetings that have been happened, but really kind of dove into it. So thanks to the committee and thanks to the previous boards for doing a ton of work, right? So one of the things for me is I'm trying to and maybe can I ask? So one of the questions for me as I go and I try and think about what the impact is in, like, I'm trying to figure out how accurate or what the risk is of the number of people qualifying going up and down. So for me, something that would be helpful is get a better understanding of like how close to yes were the maybes and kind of like what was that borderline from perspective. And then the second one is, as we look forward to this, I think one of the purposes of a LoSAP program is to increase participation, increase the number of people, number of folks that are doing things. And so what would be helpful for me is to get, I think the current roll was like 400 was the number, of which I think whatever, it's like 100 or so, 104 were either yes or maybe. So what would the goal be in terms of how many you want to be fully staffed? Right? Like how many more people might that be, right? Because then you start getting into the question of, how does that impact the 100 people who might be qualifying, right? And if the participation is higher, like how much higher is that 100 number going to be, right? So it's kind of a very interpretive question, and a bunch of it comes back it goes back to what are the underlying assumptions?
So I think I just want to start with the first assumption. So I think this is about as accurate as you can get, given the amount of rigor that was put into it. I can't imagine that you could pinpoint a number based on the numbers we have. I think that obviously and acquiring volunteers in any environment right now is a bit more challenged. I'd really have to defer, perhaps, or you can come up and talk. I don't know that we have the real trend analysis based on what we really think. I don't think we have those answers, I'm going to be honest, but in terms of ultimately growing the department, perhaps your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Is it on? Hello?
Yeah, you're on. You can also take the mic out if it's all right.
All right, Trustee Yost, how are you?
Good.
Good. So, this is as accurate as a guesstimate can get. We would hope that all 400 would make it, right? That's a great win-win for the community, for the fire department. It's not going to happen if you just look at addresses, participations, and the way you could be a member of the fire department. To get to the maybes, none of them are going to make it. That's our 20% buffer. They know I speak reality. Some of that is just people not wanting to see their name with a no. We hope they're going to make it. They're on the cusp. But I also want to just make sure that everybody at home and everybody here knows that whether you make LoSAP or not, whether you make one call a year, every single person in this room and in the department is valued for what they can do. And they're all here to support the people that can make it. We're talking about dollars. You got some members in here that won't see $200 until 2069 if you pass this. Try telling a 21-year-old that they're going to wait till 2069 to get $200. So as far as the numbers and the dollars, the other thing that scares me about how it was presented is paying the lump sum. You're going to pay $450,000 on a guesstimate. In order for the buyback to go through, the person to get that has to qualify year one. So you can say we're going to fund $450,000 for 27, 37, 60 people that may make a buyback. They have to make year one to get that. Now we just overfunded, and that'll come off in the following year. So the money can go up or down. There is no real answer. But I would say the 20% buffer is as safe as we can call it. On the downside, the number would go down 20%, the dollars, because we're putting the 20% buffer in on people that we know probably won't make it. To plan accordingly and not come up short, which would put us on the bad end.
So I actually heard your question differently than that. And so just so we're clear, we all understand the importance of it if it wasn't said enough. Otherwise, we would have put it on the agenda 2 years ago. And we said yes, pretty much up front, because we do understand. So we get that. Work sessions are oftentimes about budgets. They're very exciting that way. But it's important. That's what we have to do. So I think I heard it differently. What I heard you actually ask is, what if this really works? What if the idea of LoSAP to acquire and retain actually accomplishes that? Now the numbers are actually going to be much higher than we're predicting. So I actually, Mike, heard the question differently than the way you heard it, because that piece I could do myself. I think what Trustee Yost was actually saying, if the idea of this is not to reward people in the fire department on its own, but actually it was positioned in New York State as an acquisition and retention tool. And if it really does succeed, not that anybody has metrics frankly for it, but let's assume that we'll come up with that as we go along. Wouldn't be the first time we tried something and then the metrics followed, then we're off because its success would actually cost the taxpayer even more than our conservative estimates. But I think Mike's answer is the same, which is it's a guesstimate and Dale generally is conservative. And she actually, before you became a trustee, there were iterations of buffering things in. And then we took them back and we went this way and that way. So I think she actually did look at aggressive scenarios and conservative scenarios. And we sort of ended up what you're looking at now, which we hope you'll be comfortable with, but there was a lot of work about that as well that she took into account.
Yeah, and your interpretation of the question is accurate, right? Because I'm anticipating that it would be successful, right? I'm anticipating that it would drive participation. It would make it more attractive, especially when you look at other communities that are around. I went and I looked at every village around to see who had it and who doesn't, right? So I actually did the work to go figure it out, and it makes it more attractive, at least as attractive as some of the other ones from that perspective. And so I'm assuming that it's going to work. So I'm assuming that participation goes up. I'm assuming you're going to have more people who are going to be interested in going to events and participating in the parades and all this stuff that's going to get them points, which is a behavior change versus last year, which is what the number's based on. So I would actually, and I went back and I looked at all the stuff from 2 years ago when you initially presented, right? So all the initial kind of stuff from that perspective, and the numbers are lower than what it was, and because I think the number actually went from like 165 to like 100 or something like that, whatever it was. Like, it doesn't matter, right? But
No, you're correct. It went, and if we put it in dollar perspective, when we first approached, it was over $580,000.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So when I look at that number on an annual budget basis, right, that's 100% of the tax cap. And so, and then I go back and I look at sort of what's, benefits rates for all the other like employees that are doing work. I mean, those are going up on 6-8% a year, right? From a standard perspective, from that standpoint. So I'm trying to figure out like, what's the risk of going over the 250 / and then kind of like, what's the implication of that, right? So. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm asking the questions, right? Because you've done the math
Thank
and
you.
you've
You
kind of
both mentioned the tax cap and there's something else that we'll just bring up, which is the PBA. So to put a few things in perspective that were brought up tonight, yes, 3 years ago, we brought this to the board's attention. We were asked to hold off so we could learn about it. Last year, we were asked to hold off so you could finalize the CSEA and the PBA contract. This year, here it is again. We're being asked about the PBA contract and enough to go around. So there's nothing between the fire department and the police department. That's not my intention to say, but to keep asking us to hold off to finalize other things or maybe reduce what we want and what we feel that would drive the fire department. I just think everybody in here feels the same way. It's not right. We waited our turn, and that's why we're all here.
Yeah, you weren't actually asked to hold off. You were told that it's going to take a while for us to understand and there aren't metrics, and that communities 2 years ago, there weren't as many as there are today. So just to be clear, the other piece is, you're right. We want to go forward, but we also have to be realistic. We don't get to choose everything we want. I think the intention is to go forward and figure out how to do that, because as I stated earlier, the clock is just running out, and I don't really want to do this next year. I want to do it this year. And that's, I mean, to be fair, and people, when they're negotiating their contracts, they negotiate the contract. They don't look at everybody else and say, but we have to. And we have to do that. That's our responsibility. What else do you have? You have some more questions? I'm looking at you.
No,
Pat.
I know. I'm just thinking through
Okay.
math.
Yeah, because it's.
I'm doing math.
You're doing
in
the
my head.
math.
I'm doing my math.
This is what he does.
I'm doing math in my head, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Pat actually does this for a living.
no, multiple ways to look at it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of how we have to look at it, right?
Right.
So, which is different than And I totally understand and appreciate the work. So,
Okay, I'm gonna go to, so you're done unless you have more questions later.
I'm sure I will. It's-
My microphone keeps moving around. Sir, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to our firefighters who are here in person in the hallway and remotely. First, I want to thank all the folks that were involved in making this happen on the firefighter side, on the village staff side. It's been many years in the process. It takes a lot of work to put together. So thank you for all of that. The intention that I have, and I think I echo my colleagues, is in wanting to figure out a way to make this work. When you first presented this idea to us, it was one that we wanted to take seriously because it balanced both recognizing the valuable service that our volunteer firefighters contribute to this community, along with the fiscal responsibility that not only we have, but then future boards indefinitely will have as a result of this decision that they will not have a hand in making. And so there are some of the details around 3-year look back versus 5, a dollar contribution, et cetera, and we will have to work that out. But at its face, I think it's helpful to know we want to figure out a way to make this work. The big question that I have to start is around the lump sum question. It was one, Mike, that you expressed some disagreement with the recommendation from our treasurer. So I would love for you to expand on that just so I understand it a little bit better. And then Dale, I would love for you to respond. Mike?
Perfect. So I don't disagree with Dale ever. Dale's amazing,
Wise man.
but yes, absolutely. But as it was explained to us from Penflex and in just doing the math, you know, we're gonna dish out $450,000 and based on a certain amount of number, and what if half make it? Right now, we have that money in the bank that just can go towards this program year after year instead of having it in our bank, right? So the reason why people spread it out amongst 10 years is because that number is always forever changing, you know, and you have to make year 1 to qualify for your look back, which is big. So if we could pay that lump sum in year 2, once we know the actual hard number of the look back qualification, that would be a win-win. But to dish out 450,000 and maybe it's only 200, 250, that money's in someone else's bank getting interest. Unless it's going to be in our bank getting interest, then that's great, you know, for the community. But that's my concern, you know. It's like you're going to pay for something that you have no idea. You're going to pay for cable and you don't even know what channels you're going to get.
Dale?
Yes, yeah, you're actually not paying until they do that first year total, you know, analysis, right? That actually determines that look back period. And in terms of using fund balance, we don't have to necessarily give them, you know, those 450,000, you know, upfront. Another option is to, if the board, you know, is inclined, is to take those funds from fund balance, put it into a reserve that is then used over the 10 years towards the payment and not increasing our tax levy, right? So we're feeding it, but we've already reserved the money. It's in, you know, a reserve account for this purpose, and that's what it would then be used for. But in terms of, it's always going to get adjusted, right? Regardless if we paid it up front, you know, or paid it in pieces, they are going to always adjust to actual. They're also going to give us a rate of return, right, on those funds, which is going to go and feed this pension plan, right? Because that's the purpose of it. Every time we give them money, you know, they're estimating a 5% return, right, rate on investment. That's, you know, definitely a good, you know, rate of return. Do all of our banks have that? No, but a couple, you know, do. So we could potentially earn that 5%, you know, handling it ourselves as well. You know, but in actuality, it's probably about the same, you know, but in terms of fund balance, whether, you know, we write a check when they know how much, the first year is in total, or we do an entry that takes this piece of the funds out of fund balance unassigned and move it to, being assigned for this purpose, that would be a board decision. And either way, either method, works accordingly.
Thank you.
It's an accounting issue. It's not a,
Right.
it's an accounting words. It isn't actually, nobody's getting a check for 450,000 on day one. It's an accounting term on how she accounts for the auditors. You were gonna say
Yeah,
something?
so
The deputy mayor has to ask questions.
I yield to my colleague,
Okay,
please.
Thank
right.
you.
No, go ahead.
It will not take much of
Take as long
so-
as you want.
So Dale, is the way I should think about that upfront payment? I mean, essentially that's an unfunded pension liability, right? Is what that is. So the look back creates the pension liability, and then we've got to pay it back.
Exactly. That's for that 5-year, or 3-year or
Whatever
that
it is, whatever it ends
look-back
up being,
period.
right?
Yes, whatever it ends up being, it's going to be determined by year one because they're looking back. It's not going to be anybody else going forward. Everybody else going forward is the other portion of the analysis. But
Got
this
it.
look back is just going to be anybody that they ascertain, okay, they made it, right? And now it's a 5 or 3-year, look back
Okay,
at that point.
thank you. I yield back to Trustee.
Thank you. I now turn my attention to Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahach. Can you please clarify what are the decisions that we need to make and when do we need to make them?
Or Stuart.
I-
either one of
I
them.
was afraid you would ask that question. So the answer is 2 months ago. Really? But realistically, by the end of this week, we need to know two things from this board. We need to know, A, for this referendum, it can be increased in the future, changes can be made in the future by referendum, but for the November referendum, are you doing 10, 15, or 20? A, and B, if you are doing a look back, at what level are you doing it? I need both of those data points to PenFlex no later than, let's say, Friday noon. What? Oh, again, OFD is asking for $20 per member per month with a 5-year look back. Last meeting, they said they would settle for 3.
Whoever's speaking off microphone.
Okay. Yeah, she actually said it before, but I think it's worth repeating over and over because I think people, it's like it's a long session and half of the US population, as soon as they hear numbers, sort of eyes glaze over.
Can I mention one more thing, just because there was one more other thing at issue that we've sort of clarified? There was a question about the 10-year not spousal dependent benefit. This includes that. So if, for example, somebody reached their entitlement age of 65 and unfortunately passed away within the next 10 years, whoever their dependent was would continue to get that fixed amount until their 75th birthday.
What includes that? All of these scenarios?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say that we went with the OFD recommended 20 and 3. And we were in a worst case scenario with the police contract that now we're at or beyond the tax cap. What are the implications of that from your perspective without holding you to account about, would we just be kind of deciding, what would happen?
I can say this very plainly, and obviously this is a board decision, as the mayor said at the start of the meeting. You guys make the budget. This is your rodeo. What you would likely need to do at that point would be to vote to override the tax cap for the 2026 budget.
What exactly? Let's just tell.
I will bump to Dale.
Dale
what the
can
process
provide
is.
the ramifications of overriding the tax cap. It is done, and she can tell you exactly what it means.
It is done. And previously, when they first implemented the tax cap, it was also coupled hand in hand with residents receiving, I forget what the word analogy was, for basically a rebate. So anytime the municipality, stayed within or under the tax cap, the residents received uh, monetary compensation from the state. They stopped that probably, I want to say around 2018, somewhere in that arena, that no longer happened. So as far as implications, to our residents, property owners, village, wide, there's no, effect on them in terms of them now not getting a rebate that they previously would have if we had stayed within the tax cap. There are scenarios that different municipalities override tax caps, especially in cases of large capital projects, because unlike the school, our capital debt does count towards our tax cap. It's not excluded. So anytime we go out for a bond, or add, debt to our portfolio and now have to pay for it, that amount of bond payment is also now coming off of our increase for the tax cap. Is it going to get more and more prevalent that villages, towns, override it with the economy and how it's traversing? Yes, I believe it is going to become more prevalent. Sales tax is another one that we're keeping an eye on, right? It actually dropped slightly in the first quarter compared to the previous year. We just got April's numbers in today, which look more promising than previously thought. There's about a 12% increase over last year's April amount, but everything is volatile right now, right? It depends on the cost of products and the retirement system rates that come in and the health insurance increases, so there are a lot of variables still at play.
Generally speaking, if you talk to anybody that does this, you don't go over the tax cap. The answer is it is done. It is done as an emergency. This is not emergency. This is committing future boards forever to do this program, to pay benefits. Right now, this doesn't exist. We're adding something that we will now, not just us, but forever, perpetuity, boards will have to budget for. We rarely, if ever, have seen anything go down. It only goes up. Costs only go up. Legal fees only go up. And one case from one person is going to be way more than 45K, believe me. I mean, we've seen this. So we have to be really diligent. Breaking through the tax cap is, to me, the equivalent of like going into your savings account that you put away so that you have for emergencies. It's something most people don't want to do. And the community may not like that. They may not vote for a referendum that then goes publicly and says it's breaking the tax cap. So there's a reason for it to exist. It didn't exist before. It became something that happened through New York State. There was a reason for it. And also, I think any one of us could sit down with Dale for a tutorial, I think, on the tax cap, because it's complicated. It took me a long time to learn this stuff from the previous mayor. So all that said, I'm not seeing why we couldn't go forward, right? We're on the edge. We're like right there. But there's a difference from being on the edge to going over. So that would be the goal, because we should also look at other projects that we're doing and seeing if there's more efficiencies or other ways to look at things that maybe lowers some costs somewhere else. It's a big puzzle, right? What else do we have?
That's
I
it
just
for
want
me.
to put my own context on this discussion, having sat near this.
Not exceeding the tax cap does not equate to raising taxes, does it?
Not always.
Not always. Okay. I keep forgetting that while we can make a recommendation for the referendum that goes, we're not making the decision if it's yes or no, it's the public.
You, though, do pass a resolution.
No, right, we pass a
Which then
resolution.
puts it onto the ballot.
You
But it has
put
to
it
be
forth, but
something the
Dana-
public will find palatable.
Yeah, but
right?
Dana, the thing is, the public doesn't get to say, I want this or I want that. We have to present something. We then, along with anybody else that wants to have to hear from the public, will hear some comments, I'm sure, good and bad and indifferent and neutral, like everything else. We'll learn from those, but whatever the words are on that referendum that
Right.
we're gonna be putting
Right.
together with this committee, you want to have something that gets you to a yes.
Yeah,
Because if there's a piece that doesn't get you to a yes, the last two referendums that were on the ballot at the general election, one got passed and one didn't get passed. So it's not like they all pass. And then you have to go through this whole rigmarole, like in another 2 or 3 years. So we definitely want to put some pros together. And we want the community and taxpayers to know that we have totally thought out the variables, that we did our homework. And this is what the board, on their behalf, as their elected representatives, are comfortable with or behind, hope it happens kind of scenario. Because the public doesn't get to say, I would have done it if you had done this. They just do they just check off the box.
Trustee White, correct. You guys would be the sponsor of this program. So you're sponsoring the referendum, which gives the voting members of the village of Austining the choice to vote yes or no for it.
Is it
And
the
then we would,
village and the town or just the
we,
village?
we decided on the village, I believe.
there wasn't a definitive answer that we could ascertain. We do have an intermunicipal agreement with the town. But right now the referendum will go to village residents only. And based on the intermunicipal agreement, any adjustments that need to be made, we will do so subsequent to the referendum.
Right. And the rationale is that although we don't expect this to happen, the intermunicipal agreement with the town is just that, an intermunicipal agreement.
Right.
So if at some point in the future, they
Right.
decide they no longer wish to use the Austining Fire Department, they would have been able to weigh in on a decision that no longer impacts them. So that's how we sort of drew the line in the sand.
Correct.
But as far as the voters who vote on this, it's
Village only.
village. That's a little usual. Okay. Know that. News to me.
Dale?
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for
Yes.
her to. There you go. I need to talk to Dale. So Dale, so my heart says I would love to follow through with the recommendation from the OFD. My brain says I want to make sure we can afford it. The memo says it's 49% of the 2026 tax cap versus the 15 would be 40% of the tax cap. Can we afford the recommendation of 20 and 3?
Seeing as a portion of that total amount was already included basically in the 2025 operating budget, I feel comfortable somewhat saying that we can. To me, as the mayor pointed out, it is that we do have some larger items that are still, outstanding and are still variable because they are outstanding, right? So trying to take those into account as I did with analysis for some of those variables that we have had meetings on at this point. I am very conservative, you know that. But
I love about you.
I do feel comfortable. We did get some good news the other day that with the new enacted state budget that the village will no longer have to pay the MTA tax. So that was a nice surprise. So that will definitely be helpful.
Okay.
how much is the MTA tax a year? How much do we?
For the general fund, it's 70,000.
It helps.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask the 2015-10, these numbers? Can we explain, I'm not sure everybody who watches this will understand what we're talking about when we say, what do those numbers mean? Yeah,
Dale, do you want me to take that?
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
I mean, you're very welcome. I've done a lot of talking.
I'm catching up though, so I think you have to.
So the way that this is structured, and I don't believe any community is doing $10 per member per month that we spoke with. LoSAP has been something that's been around, at least in New York State, for 30 plus years. So most communities in Westchester, or most fire departments, I should say, with the exception of like fewer than 5, have been doing LoSAP for some period of time. $10 per member per month, just to use that example, would mean that for if I'm a member of OFD and I make all my points for 2026, which means I attend, I think, 7.5% of fire calls. I go to all of my trainings, I do my drills, I get my 50 points. The village puts $10 per month, so $120 in the bank for me. If there are 10 other members who have that, it's 120 times 11, right? There's 11 of us, $120. You either make it or you don't. So you don't like kind of make a year. You either hit 50 or you don't hit 50. If you got 49, too bad, so sad. You need 50. And so $10 per member per month is sort of the bottom of the spectrum. There are some communities who started at 20 and then went to 30. There are some communities who started at 10 and now we're at 40. Just a reminder, if you want to change the dollar amount in the future, that must also be done by a referendum. The board can't make a decision at this dais. The board would make a decision at the dais to do another referendum. But once you fix that number, that's good as gold for a while.
is there any movement? I mean, those numbers are fixed, like, could you say, well, maybe not 20, but how about 18? You know what I mean? Like, can you do that or?
We didn't do anything past like the like 10, 15, 20.
Right.
So to your question, like, did we do like
Maddie, can you speak into the mic?
what?
I can't hear you.
Near the mic.
Hi. We didn't look at anything between 10 and 15 or anything between 15 and 20. I don't know that it would make a difference. But also like for round figures, it's definitely easier
Yeah.
for forecasting. Pardon? Is what correct?
Yeah.
Which part?
It is correct.
It is correct. We looked at $10 per member per month, $15 per member per month, $20 per member per month.
Making it $18 doesn't move the needle enough to even be worth the ink it's written in. It's
That's
just,
good.
especially on the individual basis with what they walk away with.
Math was never my strong suit.
Yeah.
That's why
It
you're
is
here.
his.
That's why I'm here.
What are you saying that?
So because
Try to make
you
that.
said the contribution is 10, 15, or 20. It's the payment that's 10, 15, or 20.
She
Correct?
said the
No.
village, no, she
No.
said payment.
It's both.
Yeah.
So somebody with 20 years, somebody who's got 20 years worth of credit at 20 years a month gets
So
$400 a month.
correct. If we start
Right.
with the 10, you have to have 5 years to vest. So 5 consecutive years.
Right.
Mhm.
So once you hit 20 at the $10, you'll get $200
A month in perpetuity.
Correct. And then you can keep increasing up into 40 years max.
Right. So max is whatever. At 20, the max is going to be 800
Correct.
A
At 40.
month.
At 40.
At
years.
40 at
It would
40
be
years,
800
at
for the
$20
$20 plan.
a
Correct.
month.
Yes.
Yep.
At age 65.
Right. Which is what you get paid. Because you said they contribute at that much.
Oh,
'Cause- Yeah, because you're paying into it for us
because
to
it's a
get it.
benefits program. and-
The number that we pay is an actuarial calculation in order to be able to pay out that amount.
Yes, but because it's a benefits program, they call it from a accounting point of view, a contribution, because that's what they call it. It's a semantics. It's a payment. Yeah, it's just semantics. Yeah.
So to put position out there, I'm at 20 and 3 is where I am. 20 and 3. $20 per member per month, 3-year.
Because you want
look
this
back.
meeting to move to, since we have 4 days or 3 days, what is it, Wednesday? We have 2 days. Yeah, but in fairness, we've been looking at this for a very long time.
Yeah.
So let's be real. I'm sorry, I need to open my folder again. Sorry, because I can look at this. Got it. So you want to do 20?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. 20, and you want to do 3.
Correct.
Okay. I think the goal here is to get some numbers down because we can discuss this and discuss, and the committee has discussed this, hundreds of hours. It's not like the first time we're hearing this. So do you have an opinion about this, Pat? I can move to Dana as well. It's
I think I'm coming at it a little bit more conservatively. I think I'm more 15-3, right? Simply because I believe that it'll be successful. And so the number of people participating is gonna go up. Right? And so that's.
you think it'll be successful? We'll have more people and we underestimated the numbers. Okay.
That's it.
Let me move. So there are 4 votes on this because trustee Fritchie will not be voting. We need 3 votes. We're not voting right now. I'm getting a sense of thumbs up or down of where we're going so that the attorney can put something together so that we can start moving forward.
I just want to be clear,
Or somebody.
there's no vote at this time.
Right.
This is, you're giving guidance to give to Penn.
I should have said
Right,
it that
okay.
way. Yeah.
In order to get the resolution.
Yes,
So we do need to know before the end of this week. But this is a discussion to get the temperature of the room
Yeah.
and what the majority wants. It's very hot.
Yes.
Well, I certainly want to go 23. I worry that if we put in a number that community thinks will somehow.
Nope.
Thank you.
I'm worried that if we put forth a referendum that the community feels might be too, might raise taxes or make them fear we're going to break the tax cap, that they may not vote for it.
Okay.
So it has to be a number that we know can pass.
Just want to, I'm sorry, I do want to say because obviously the more you spend, the less money you have for the tax cap. That's obvious. But I would say that conservatively speaking, that could happen almost at, again, we don't know what we don't know. I would say that internally and working very closely with the fire department, with Mr. Aurora, we've worked this out as conservatively as possible at every level. So it's the comfort, again, there are other things that we can do, and there may be things that, that we don't buy or that we don't do. Our fixed cost, though, are benefit costs for employees, insurance rates, which are variable, and we are living in a bit more volatile times than we typically are. But really, that's true all the time because you never know when the next pandemic or anything's going to be. So there's really no way to say with any certainty other than the confidence that we put the time in. And there's always opportunities to look at the budget from a holistic point of view too, before we get to the point where we are in risk of overriding the tax cap.
So,
Sorry, can I just echo on that? Because I just want to thank Karen for that. She hit 2 words, conservative. Going down to the 3 years at the 20, we feel, I know I've been saying it all night, just have to hold our position, right? All right. 20 with 3, we were 20 with 5. But the confidence, Karen touched on the confidence in Karen and Maddie and Dale, the confidence they have in me. We've trimmed this as much as we can. Other communities, other departments, as Maddie said, are going to 30. They're dropping the age from, no one talked about this, they're dropping the age from 65 to 60 to somewhere at 55 right now, which means you're paying out longer. We're comfortable, 65, right around Social Security time. We're comfortable with the 20. We dropped from 5 to 3. Trustee Yost, I ask you to please reconsider. We really, that's what we're asking.
so
Thank you.
So I'll go 23. If we get a change in numbers, I'll actually increase that from 3 to 5. But I'm comfortable selling this to the public. I'm comfortable the board can. I know you looked at the numbers. We discussed this earlier. There are two things I never like about these things, any of these. I've said it, I'll say it again. I don't like shackling future boards to an entire system. There are plenty of communities do this. They've got like 2 firehouses, 3 firehouses. Some of the bigger ones are cities. Cities are funded differently than us. We are going to have to not buy as many things as we may otherwise buy in order to make up for it. And it feels to me that in 5 years, when there actually will be metrics for Ossining, not for Briarcliff and not for other communities, until the state has a whole different system in place. My read, personally, seeing how the state of New York works, is that in about 5 years, this whole thing, when there will be actual metrics, will probably take a change, and the state will do it, but I can't count on them one way or the other, as we've learned. So I'm real comfortable selling it at the recommendation. So Pat, you'll think about it a little bit, because I know you looked at everything. And I think the community will do this. I'm sorry that we don't have more of our building blocks. We worked really hard for a whole bunch of months and many, many meetings to have other things lined up so that we're not having this discussion about the tax cap, that we had hoped that everything would be lined up, but it isn't. So we may have to look at expense cuts at some things. We may not buy as much next year. Okay, it'll wait another year. That we'll live. So we'll figure it all out. The biggest storyline here is we are adding something that does not currently exist, that includes benefits and personnel time and staffing time, which we're not adding to, and all these other variables. That's, to me, actually the scarier part than just the budgets, which we spent an hour and a half talking about, which is the money, because there are all these other variables. But I think that we can sell this to the community. I think this community will vote yes if presented correctly and presented fairly and sees the homework that's been done. We have to be conservative. If you read the news, you will find that municipalities, some are going bankrupt, some have problems with their water plants and need emergency funding because they didn't plan on it correctly. So when we say we're conservative, there's a reason we do that. This is a very densely populated, a lot of people live in Ossining, over 30,000. It's a lot of people. So I'm comfortable. This is like, you've got your numbers. I don't know if you'll change or not, because I always like unanimous. You know me, I always want everybody to feel at least comfortable, if not happy. But I think we have a green light, a go ahead on these numbers. Yeah. That's good. Okay. So for Friday, I actually,
20 and 3? 20 and 3.
well, we have a majority, there's 4 of us, so we do have a 23, if Pat goes with 23. I think that's very fair. It still passes, but I'd rather have that. I would have liked to do a little bit more, but I'm not comfortable with a little more. What's happening here? What's happening? Okay, yeah, well, and you can ask Dale. I mean, it's a work session. It's not a legislative session. We can do other things.
These folks have been wonderfully patient with all of our.
Yeah,
And thank you for the support, for showing your support, right? I know
Yeah.
It's the middle of the week and it's, I don't know, dinner time and all that sort of stuff.
yeah, Mike, we're not actually negotiating. Negotiating is 2 parties sitting at, well, I don't sit like that when we meet. We're all trying to get this done. We're not negotiating here. I'd love to give you guys 5 times this. That's not conversation. That's, our role is a little different from that. I would give you 5 times that. We have too many balls in the air and so much uncertainty, more now than we've ever had. Worse than the pandemic, actually, if, from a budget point of view right now, not Ossining. I mean, everything together. So, we're good? You guys can get some fresh air. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
I
Am
just
I
wanna say-
assuming that nobody
Hold on.
wants to stay?
I
for
just
the
want to
rest of-
thank everybody in here for their time as always, and it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Chief. Thanks,
Just
Chief.
a little break.
Jamie, we're going to take a break.
Thank you.
Everybody good? Good. Maddie, thank you and Dale. Oh, she's not on. She can't hear me. Okay. Jamie,
Rika,
we're gonna go back on. Break is over.
we didn't stop record. We don't stop recording, so.
Oh, wait, you don't stop. Jesse does. Sorry.
N-
Jesse, we're on? Okay, we're back. All right, we're gonna move a couple of things on the agenda around, right, Karen?
Right. So we do have two members from the Chamber of Commerce here, the Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce. We have Rob Lowenthal and Greg Young. And since they're here with us tonight, we're going to move them up on the agenda. And I'd like to invite them up to the podium. And we do have a brief PowerPoint. They will be discussing their restaurant week concept. And there are some things that they want to present to the board in terms of using this as an economic development driver. So with that, Jamie, maybe you can also put the presentation up too.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak today and your time. I know your time is very valuable, and it's been a long evening for you so far. So I'll probably try and be as brief. If you don't know me, I think I know most of the people on the board. My name's Rob Lowenthal. I'm a real estate business. I'm part owner of the bookstore. I'm on the Green Ossining board for the last 10 years. I'm one of the board members of the chamber. So I wanted to talk about an idea that's been formulating in the chamber's mind for a couple of months. And it's a two-part thing, and I'll try. So the original idea was called the Taste of Ossining. That's an idea, but that name sort of didn't really, it was okay, but it didn't click. And we wanted something that would draw not only Ossining, but the whole Hudson Valley and Westchester. So it was changed recently to Hungry on the Hudson. And if we
You
can
just have to tell Jamie when to go
change
next.
the
So
slide
just
to
say
the
next.
slide, Hungry on the Hudson. Hungry on the Hudson is a restaurant week. It's will involve all the restaurants in Westchester, in the greater Ossining area, including the lower village, including the upper village, including Briarcliff. As you know, in the past, a lot of the upper village businesses and restaurants have been, have, whether true or not, have been, perception has been they've been ignored. So we want to include everybody. And not only them, but the brick and mortar businesses too. We're proposing the week before June 20th through the 29th. Let's see, we want to stress that, we're going to include all businesses, not just brick and mortar, but also businesses that are not brick and mortar. Let me also say that the cost, we've already lined up sponsors, which one of the sponsors is the new building developer down on Water Street, Jim and Bill. Yeah, thank you, Jim. And they have stepped up to be one of our grand sponsors. So the cost, this isn't a money making, unlike and I won't dwell on the past, unlike other chamber events, this isn't a money making sort of proposition. All money that is collected for this or anything that is saved on this will go back into the event. The idea here is to promote the restaurants, basically, and the businesses. Restaurants are having an extremely tough time now, between the price of food inventory and people not going out as much. They're really having a tough time, and we want to support them. And we think this event will bring everybody together, both the restaurants and the businesses and the village and the community. It's really, really about community. Next slide. Okay, so in Ossining, I did a quick search, and according to the resources, there are over 948 restaurants or food purveyors in Ossining. but I would have to guess, and I'm basing this on myself. I have been, you find a favorite restaurant. That's the one you keep going. So I would bet most people have not been to most of the restaurants. So we want to open that up to people. We want to show people that we're not just, we're not just the Boathouse. We're not just Westerly. We're not just Maliki's. That there are many restaurants, whether Portuguese or Hispanic or Peruvian. And we have joined up, we have translators that will go in and talk to these restaurants and bring them into the fold, both Portuguese and Hispanic. Next slide, please. The second part of our proposal is we'd like to do dinner and a movie. So we'd like to tail end the week with a outdoor movie in Market Square. Now, in the past, when I was on the board of Ossining Matters during the pandemic of all times, we did an outdoor movie at Brookside, which was very successful. We used an outside projector company that was fully insured, and we would again make sure that they're fully insured against any liability against either the chamber or the village. But we would like to do this in Market Square on the tail end of Friday, at the tail end of the event, at sundown, which is usually at this time of the year would be about 8:30, 8:40.
Yeah, it's one of the longest days. I think it's very close to one of the longest
Yeah.
days. Yeah,
And
22nd.
do on Saturday. Well, this would give people time to really go
Yeah.
out and have dinner. We're not doing any vendors, low fruit, no vendors. Although when I spoke to Bill, he said, would you have vendors? And I think at least for the first year that we try this, that we have no vendors. The one exception is we might have Penny Lick, which is the local ice cream, have like a little ice cream cart there. But in other words, the idea is to grab dinner and see a movie. At no time, I should stress this because this has always been, no time will any public streets be closed to traffic. We don't want that. We want people to be able to get to the event, to get to the restaurants. We want to show that Ossining is open for business, which brings me to another point. We're in the timeline. I think what we're asking, we're in the timeline, I believe it's 45 days. Karen, you correct me if I'm wrong, for permit acquisition.
To really double check, again, that's
That-
a good
That number
guideline.
sticks in my head.
Yeah, but,
So we're within that. So we'd like to ask that a couple of things for movie night. We'd like to ask that time limit be waived for this program. In addition, we'd like to, although we're more than willing to pay the permit fee, which I think is $325 or somewhere along those lines, and the parking fee for that one night. And the permit fee, if we have to pay that, we have to pay it. But every dollar that we save will go into the promotion of this event, will go to supporting this event. The chamber is making little, so the expense to the village is minimum. A couple of no parking signs and maybe a sawhorse across the thing. Or so if we close Market Square parking lot at 7 o'clock, I don't think the village will lose a lot of revenue, because I don't think a lot's collected on a Friday or Saturday night after 7 o'clock. I could be wrong, but that is my guess based on my customer base that comes into the bookstore. So I'm not sure. So in return for that, we're more than willing to put on all the banners, the marketing, everything, however you want to phrase it, in cooperation with the village of Ossining. I've always, Karen's heard me say this, and I think Rika and Dana, I always think there's a pathway to having the business community and the village working together to boost everybody up to the surface. And we're willing to do all the heavy lifting on this project to prove that this diagram or this method would work. So that's what we're asking. And every dollar saved. Can I have the next slide? Oh, wait, I already have the next slide. Thank you. So we would be doing banners. We have partnered up with the Macaroni Kid, which is a marketing firm, to do social media and have influencers. I'm talking to the Have a Straw Chamber, who's wanted to partner up with us for about a year to get people over on the ferry. The ferry will be running, and I'm going to reach out to the ferry folks and see if we can't get people from Have a Straw to come over for dinner or an afternoon restaurant week. So what's in it for the restaurants? What do the restaurants have to do? The restaurants can do as little or as much as they want. They could have specials. They can have whatever they want. Or they can do nothing at all. They could do restaurant, but regardless of whether they do a little or a lot, we are going to promote them. They're going to be on our website. We already have a website established. They will be promoted, so you can look down and say, I want Peruvian tonight. I want Turkish. I want to eat by the water, and whether they do a special or not. In addition to that, we are going to reach out to all the brick and mortar and non-brick and mortar to see if they are interested in. So I've just walked out of the boathouse. I have my receipt. I go to the bookstore and I say, I just ate in town. And with this receipt, I can get 5% or 10% off or 2 for 1 or whatever, whether they get. So really the goal is to bring people into Ossining, to put us on the map. Other villages and towns have done Restaurant Week in the past. They've been very successful. And I think we have a dynamic community. And I think we need to show it off. We've reached out to the county exec's office. They are very excited about this. They are going to help us in any way they can. And let's see, next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. There we go. I see the arrow running around, but, oh, am I looking at the wrong screen now?
No.
Cost or participation?
What's that?
Are we on cost? Is that the slide we should be on?
The next one, I think the next one is cost. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the cost, like I said, I'm jumping around a little bit because you're not catching me at my best. But the cost of the village is minimum, but I think the investment is well worth it to prove this formula at the village, and the businesses can work together and we can make this a dynamic community. As we said, we have a grant sponsor. We will get other sponsors. We have no vendors. So there will be no vendor cost. There'll be no profit to the GOCC. Next page. Okay, and that's really it in a nutshell. I know you had a long night, so that's why I'm sort of rushing through it. But questions?
I have one.
Yes.
There was how many food establishments in the village?
I have done a research at 920.
900?
Town and Briarcliff. So we're talking the upper village, everywhere from Tasty Table to North State Road to over to Briarcliff and then back in the village.
Thank you.
10510, yes. And it is entirely up to the restaurants how involved they want to be. The minimum, we would just list them as 105.2 American Food, maybe with their link to their website. More so, we can do specials. We're going to have video pop-outs on social media, things of that nature.
Is there a precedent for suspending the permit fee? I think there might be.
The subsequent to the doing the event plan. So when we did the event policy, it was because there were a lot of inconsistencies about implementing fees and everything. And, you know, it really came down to the fact that no matter what event you did, people would argue it's good for the village. It brings people here. So we initiated the policy after doing tremendous amount of research on it. We've been executing the policy right now. The policy, unless it is a village sponsored event, all the fees apply. These are policies, they evolve in some communities. Chambers do work in partnership. I would say the most analogous thing we have is Green Austin, but keep in mind, Green Austin is a town village committee. It's not a separate entity.
So they're not a 501c. They're, Green Austin is a
This
different
is
type.
a,
This
it's,
is a
Committee
501.
of
This
the
is,
village.
this is,
Okay.
so I wouldn't even get into 501c. I just say separate organization or an offshoot of the village, a committee, or Green Austin was formed by the village and town of Austin. So, that is basically how the policy works now. I believe what's being asked of the board, and that, this is always a consideration. If you feel that, again, the argument that events do, bring people to the village is true, most of them do. Do they benefit businesses? That really is a big question. Sometimes they do, sometimes they only benefit certain businesses. And a lot of times they bring people to the village or the town and they don't really benefit necessarily any business. In fact, we've had discussions about doing things at the waterfront takes, things away from business. There's all types of ways to look at this. That said, if the village feels that something is a genuine incentive, and the business community is supportive of that, that could be a different consideration. And that is something that I believe the board is being asked to decide on tonight, or discuss at least tonight.
We have reached out to a handful of restaurants so far, and the feedback, just casually, and the feedback has been absolutely, wow, this is great. You're including the whole community, not just the downtown restaurants, not just the waterfront restaurants. I know in the past, some of these events by the chamber, and I don't want to dwell on the past because I'm looking forward, but in the past, these have been money-making opportunities. The only people who want making money here are the local businesses, whether they're the restaurants, the brick and mortars, or non-brick and mortars. That's what we're looking to do. We're looking to put some in the verbiage you can decide on in cooperation with the Village of Ossining. I really think there's a path where the businesses and the village can work together. And we just have to find that path that works, that'd be beneficial for both the village, the community, people that live in the village and town, and the businesses here. Because I think there is a space, and I don't think we're there yet. I think there is a space where everybody can come out, beneficial. It could benefit everybody.
So, and touching on trustees White's key word was precedence. If we do waive it, then you're saving then you're starting a precedence. So, yeah, and we've gotten away from setting precedents like that. So I personally am not in favor of waiving the fee.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Add something. So with regard to precedent, I think that the board would be setting a precedent one way or the other. I mean, it's going to be a precedent whether the decision is no or yes. But just to elaborate on something Rob was talking about, representing the entire community, the movie night is one small piece. We have been in touch with Bethany Arts Community. We've been in touch with Grace Episcopal Church. We've been in touch Westchester Collaborative Theater doing a dinner and a show. It's their main show that week. Bethany and Grace Episcopal Church, that's their arts and action event as well. The Sing Sing Prison Museum doing their walking tours down at the waterfront. They will be doing walking tours. The idea is to offer a lunch. So this is one piece that is the goal is, and what the reason why we're asking for you to set this precedent is because past events haven't represented the entire community geographically. and in many other ways. But this is one core piece. We are going to be doing events throughout the community. We will be partnering. Torview is going to be opening up their facility to a big food night. There's a lot of conversations happening simultaneously. So we want to make sure, I mean, there's conversations about past events that haven't represented the brick and mortar. So this is one piece that will represent the Main Street corridor that is in addition to numerous other community collaborative conversations. So what we're asking the village to do is just to collaborate with us, right? No different than the Bethany Arts Community, no differently than Grace Church, no different than the Sing Sing Prison Museum or any of these groups that we're talking to. So the hope is to collaborate, not necessarily to set a precedent for giving away free money. The idea is not to give money to somebody. The idea is for us to spend more money promoting it and supporting the businesses. That's my.
So we won't actually be setting a precedent. We've set a policy over a 2-year period. The precedent concept is when you move away from the policy you have. That's when you set precedents, not when you keep in line with the policy. And all those organizations that you mentioned do events on their property. Secondly, more importantly, I'm confused. I just heard a whole bunch of events, but the only thing in front of us is one event next month in 4 weeks.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
all the rest is not in front of us.
These-
What's in front of us is a singular event that's happening next month. Okay, so all the other conversations that may or may not be happening, I mean, I would feel that if anybody came to my business and said, would you like, without any strings attached, to be involved in fill in the blank, I would say yes. Why not, right? I mean, it sounds great. It's only an upside if you're not making people pay for tents or pay for this. I would say yes, I think it's great. Why not? I have a couple of questions about this event that you're in front of specifically, which is happening next month, which we're hearing about. We got the material just a few days ago, but I haven't seen anything out in the public yet, but that could just be me. Talk to me a little bit about this Ossining Briarcliff. Is the chamber an Ossining chamber or an Ossining Briarcliff chamber?
It's a greater Ossining chamber.
So
the
does
chamber just-
Briarcliff have its own chamber, or is
They
it?
do not anymore. The Briarcliff Chamber dissolved a month ago.
Oh, so it's recent.
So
Okay.
very recent. So there are restaurants there such as the
Terra Rustic, well, he owns like
not-
4 places.
yeah, Terra
but-
Rustica, which is in the town. He owns 2 places, but
Yeah.
I was thinking along more along.
Yeah, he owns all of them, 4
yeah,
actually.
more
Yeah.
along Pleasantville Road.
Right. So Rob, just so I didn't know that they dissolved a month ago. So let me ask you this. How many people have raised their hand and said, yeah, I'll do a something or other, whatever that something or other is, both in Briarcliff and how many people have signed something that says, I'm in?
We haven't there because I wanted to present first.
Oh.
We will, depending on what happens tonight, we will go, we're ready to go full force. We already have a website.
Okay,
We already have
Good.
a logo. We already have
great.
You just need us to talk about the Market Square component.
pretty much just
Okay.
about it's really just about the Market Square.
Okay.
And as I said, we could put on all the banners in cooperation. I know that's sort of.
We'll have to discuss that.
What's your grant sponsor going to cover? Do they
He's
cover
covering
the
all our
entry fee?
costs. He's covering the film licensing costs. He's covering the company that comes up and sets up the projector and the screen. He's covering some marketing initiatives. So like window posters and banners and
Well, it's a problem.
outreach.
Rob, it would be helpful to have a transparent budget to know what really, because that I think is helpful to really understanding where the money, because you're saying the money is going to be reinvested.
Any money we get or save is going to be reinvested.
Yeah, but without understanding what the sponsorship levels are and what the budget is, that is not, I think, as meaningful to us to be able to make a decision that doesn't, for the board to make a decision that involves taxpayer money. It would have to be a transparent budget in terms of that. And we'd have to really understand how it's working and how your sponsorships are working.
I don't actually know if we need all that. The only thing we're being asked for is to give up some parking revenue from 7 o'clock. It's like, right?
7 to
So-
10.
Be an hour's worth for, I think, 16 spaces, and then everything else is a permit, which wouldn't be used on a Friday night anyway, because farmers market's the next.
Right,
week.
so that's, I
just to
mean,
be
we're only
clear,
being asked for a
just to be
couple of
clear on the
things.
spaces, the parking lot has to be like empty few hours before. It's not really an issue, but
It's
you
a
don't
Friday,
empty
yeah.
it at 7.
No,
So my question to the village manager is, we have a moratorium on events downtown, correct?
I'm sorry, the moratorium is on large scale events that close the streets. And it also is conditional on the, the reason that we did that. And I want to be very clear because there seems to be some misunderstanding and miscommunication about that. For many, many, many years, or as long as I've been here, which isn't many, but still, we've had an inconsistent buy-in from businesses on the street about the street closings, particularly when they happen consecutively and you're closing the street 2 or 3 weekends in a row. That combined with the fact that sometime, it's probably going to be later in the summer, we'll be closing the Brandreth lot that we're limited on parking. It was very important to the businesses that we keep everything operational. And one thing that came up consistently was the street closures. Generally speaking, the majority of businesses were not supportive of the street closures. So that said, this is really about the businesses, not about us.
Yeah.
It's about what's helping the businesses. If the businesses are now saying this event is actually good to help us, and they're okay with the fact that they might lose some parking that night, because they will, although the Brandreth lot will still be open at this time, then I think that's a different scenario. The whole goal here is to make sure that the businesses are supported and not hurt in any way.
so
I think the part of the thing is not closing the streets. We know as at least what I was told, that the Brandreth lot construction won't start till the end of June, beginning of July. I don't know if that's still the schedule. So this comes in right before the Brandreth. So it's like a gift, and it goes right into the following week is River Jam. So it goes from one event to the other, which
Is
really-
your movie night going to compete with the River Jam?
No,
No.
it will not. River Jam starts July
that was my
3rd.
next question.
Well, yeah, I just want to say that I think it sounds like a fun idea. I wonder what movie you're going to show. Is it family friendly? PG-13? What are we talking about?
I'm thinking E.T.
Oh, that's a
Okay.
classic.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Okay.
I will take suggestions. I want to jog.
And then will we need, see, the thing is though, you're going to need parks to set up chairs. You're not expecting
No, they're
people.
bringing their own. It says that people
Bringing
bringing their own.
Okay,
All right.
so we're not going to have any manpower
Well,
issues?
No.
the question will be just, sorry, Rob, the breakdown Friday night going to Saturday morning, because the farmer's market gets there bright and early at 5, so everything would have to be.
We'll be out of there. So that's why there will be no chairs either.
Right, so
And This is really just a parking lot closing. That's all that's being requested.
right, so I like the idea a lot. I mean, there are all sorts of restaurant weeks, magazines run them, all sorts of stuff. So that's all good. I like the idea that it's Briarcliff and Ossining. I don't know how that's gonna work. You didn't leave yourself a lot of time because it's next month. So just to be clear, the village has lots of programs that attracts lots of people. Actually, almost every day of the week for 2.5 months, there are village-sponsored programs run by the village. They're called entertainment and music, and they attract hundreds of people from both sides of the river. So I don't want anybody walking away believing that we don't already do lots of programs. What's really, and they're very helpful. We get mixed reviews from businesses. You didn't do a survey, anything, so we'll take your word that people said, they'll participate and all that. I don't think there are real metrics, but, we'll deal with that. From my perspective, that's not what you're asking us for anyway. And you have a sponsor, which is fantastic. I
think-
have to talk to you about who the sponsor is. The fact that we're signing contracts with these people adds a question. I don't want to do it here.
I
So-
think though it's the first year, I think.
So
it's
that's my
worth-
point. I think it's worth, I don't like, and trustee Fritchie's right. 2 years were spent on putting a fair and equitable events policy based on numerous complaints that every time somebody comes, a church comes, or this group comes because a trustee sits on their board or whatever, they get some differential treatment, which is not fair to all the other nonprofits that run events and want to do stuff. That always benefits a community. I can't think of a nonprofit that doesn't somehow benefit the community. I love the idea that it's Friday, not for me personally. I don't go out on Friday nights for stuff like that myself, but I love the idea because I don't think not gonna interfere with like the salons, and they're closed for the most part by about 7 o'clock. Maybe they're open another hour, but I don't think it'll disrupt many of the businesses. There are many more businesses that are not restaurants than there are businesses that are restaurants. So you're not going to interfere with them. That's fantastic. So a lot of the complaints that we might get, we're not going to get. It's a
And-
Friday night. It's great. It's a summer night. And they could be included. They could give a $5 off at a barber shop if you went to the boathouse and had dinner, right? That's what you want to do. And they can have a coupon if they get that ready. I mean, I give you lots of accolades for trying to put something together in a month from now and that you've done a lot of work. I love the idea that you're going beyond Ossining. I think that's great. We get a lot of Briarcliff people already, but now you're going to leverage that. I think it's fantastic that you're going beyond Ossining because we're the waterfront. They don't have a waterfront. So I think that's great. There are a lot of positives. I personally agree with Bob that I don't want to change the policy. The parking, we should be able to manage, giving up on. I mean, there's a few, but it's Friday night. I just feel like if it's a nice night, people are really going to appreciate. I love the carry in, carry out, but you and I both have to understand there will be garbage because just because you say carry in, carry out doesn't mean that's what people are going to do. You are going to have to deal a little with sanitation, but it's not the end of the world. But that's all we were asked for, right? As far as where the village, the municipality sits and whether this is a municipal event, I tend to shy away from that. Because it then becomes our event. People then complain to us, call us. I'd rather let this happen I know you're laughing, but you see, we get lots of different
I
issues.
Get that.
We get a lot of issues here, and then it's why them and not us. But I would love to do metrics on the first year, see where it is, and then see. Maybe you guys could, and maybe we can look at a future where we see how this works out. And then you may not want to do it with the village. You may want to do it just as a chamber because it could be something you're more interested in and not be tied to anybody else. Or you may want to do it as a village event. But I think in year one, we should stay neutral, stay within our policy, because we could always look at the results for next year. And you're going to come back and say, listen, when I called the mayor in Tarrytown and asked her about one of their events, they actually now measure, they pay a company to do it, but they make enough money to do it. They do measure the increase in foot traffic in restaurants and the ice cream parlor that's on Main Street. Those are great metrics because then you could say, look, this is what it does. But we're not there yet. But I
Okay.
love to stay neutral. So those are the two things you asked for, right?
So I will, yeah.
Okay.
And the time limit, because we're within the 45 days.
That's for me. I'm only one
But
vote.
and I get the precedent thing, Robert.
No,
I
I forgot the third.
I get the
apologize.
precedent thing. I will leave you on a couple of thoughts. I've lived in Ossining, greater Ossining area, going on 25 years. And I have a distinct memory of coming down, there was Danny's.com cafe for those that, but there was nothing downtown. People are coming downtown, and I know this from the bookstore. People come in, I never came downtown, but there's so much happening down here now.
Right.
And we want to keep that momentum, and with the building that's going to be going on in the next 2 years, we want to keep that building, that this is an exciting community to live in and to visit and to work in and to have a business in. And, I have a very good relationship with the Bill at the Parks Department at the moment. So at the moment.
I'm gonna have to just cut you
Oh,
off.
yeah,
because
cut me.
Nothing, I just want to reiterate, you're asking us for three things. I made a mistake. I just need to hear on the ask that's in front of us, how are we feeling? You spoke, you didn't speak yet, and everybody else. They're asking for three things. Where are we all? That's what you're asking for.
What's the third?
Well, one
Parking,
is that to
permit?
permit them because they're already beyond the permit time.
Oh,
So they want us to tell the village manager it's okay that they've exceeded the window. The other one is that they
Parking
the
spaces.
Parking, which my singular opinion is, I think that's fine. I think it's a good thing for the village, it's something on Friday. And the third thing is the fee for the event, which I am not okay with because there will be a line of others. There will be a line of others immediately following this event telling us why why did we do it for this when we don't do it for that?
So-
They too generate traffic and foot traffic. and
So you,
blah, 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 blah.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Right.
The policy requires if you're using a parking space, it's $10 per parking space. You are okay with waiving that fee?
I am okay of waiving, it's for an out, right? It's for how many hours?
Close it at 5 o'clock.
You're gonna have to close it early
Yeah,
because people are parking there.
Close at like 6:30,
No.
Well, no, see, the thing is you'll end up towing cars and then nobody's going to be happy. So typically the way it works is we have to put signs up. If you don't want to tow cars, it really has to be done pretty well in advance. And I don't even think 5:30. Usually the police do this.
Put up the signs probably the morning before even, so Thursday morning, but we would tell people you got to have your car out by 5 o'clock so
5
that you
o'clock.
can start loading it.
Probably, yes, yeah.
Okay, so it's 3 hours of giving up 16.
So yes,
spaces
because
worth.
this is a
Okay.
very short event. It's not a day-long event.
So if
Yes.
you're asking me whether I'm okay of
Got it.
making
Yep.
that, I, with my one thumbs up or down, am okay, but not on the permit, but I'm okay on the other two.
Okay.
items. That's for me on this, because I think it's
Understood.
worth a try. It's something new. We'll see.
So I'm,
Uh,
I'm in line with the mayor, but I've been here 65 years. I've seen a lot of change.
Oh, so you were here when they tore down all the buildings. on the
I've
south
watched
side of
it
the
all.
street.
And his family goes back another generation
Yep.
before him,
2 generations.
2 generations before him.
No, they just let that happen. No. Okay.
Pat?
Understood.
Oh,
Understood.
did you want to say something? I think we've all spoken. Did you
I-
want to say something?
I haven't, yet, but so one,
Oh, I'm sorry, Pat.
thank you, right, to, feel free to reach out, like, in advance, because like I was at the rec advisory board meeting on Monday and this didn't come up, right? So I don't know when you talked to Bill.
It's casual. I talk to Bill all the time, so I floated the idea by him and he was like, oh, I have no problem with it. Talk to the board. of
Okay,
trustees."
all right, and being on the rec advisory board, before I was on this, I was on the rec advisory board for probably 10 years at that point, so I went through all of the special permitting and the process development piece, and so I understand the need for it, right? And whatever, you've got additional resources that could have been talked to,
Well,
right?
we're
as
still,
well.
we're
And
still
so-
gonna talk, we're
and-
still gonna
and you
talk
will.
to the place
Yep.
making
No,
guys.
no. So no, this separately. So now, so what I would say is that one, I love the idea, right? And like we've talked about this, several times in terms of this, in terms of like leveraging the culinary side of it, right? We do a lot with the arts. And I do think that the food and that portion of it is definitely an under leveraged resource. It's like we go to a bunch of restaurants, we love to eat the different kind of ethnic foods. And when I have people in town, we're like, hey, look, we're going to go get Portuguese or we're going to, whatever, right? We do that and make a thing of it. So I totally agree with the concept. What was specific about this week, that week that you chose?
Specifically because it's the last week before, full week before July. Once we get into July and August, not only are people away, but we have the concert series on the waterfront.
And things get busy.
So, yeah, the rec,
Okay.
the
that's
rec
fair.
has concerts on
I mean,
Thursday
they're
night,
doing
the Wednesday
jazz,
night.
they do the
Yeah.
jazz events, they do
So
the,
once we get into
yep,
July,
all that
there's a
stuff.
lot of competing events. I thought
fair.
this was a good lead into all
Yeah.
those events.
That's fair. It's, I do think that, so the timing is actually 75 days in the permit process. Is actually what it is.
Oh. All right, Karen.
The timing has a lot to do with the amount of paperwork that we have to do.
Totally,
So-
totally agree.
So
So
for
the
an
ways,
event like this, it's, when we have to get vendors and insurance and all that stuff,
Yeah,
you can't do it at the last
to-
minute.
but
That's
yeah,
I think
personally, I
it's
think.
just being precise.
I'm being precise, right? Because I built the policy. So I do think though that just given the way that it's structured, it probably would qualify as a level 1 like event, which means that Bill can do it. Like Bill can approve it on his own. Okay. Which is the concept, right? So I think just given the time, the structure and stuff like that from
Okay. And we'll know
Which
after
is a
the
little-
event if it's what level it's at. We'll see
Exactly,
what we
and,
get.
and we'll,
It's,
and be able to
it's-
do a, a more in advance, kind of more like planned out event, because I really would want to be able to take advantage of something like this and do it broadly, right?
and
Like, I
make-
think.
Make no mistake, there are gonna be hiccups.
No, I totally agree, right?
we're
So,
trying
so I want to, I'm trying to, I want to figure out, I think, I'm already thinking next year, right? Like, how do we make it?
Yeah, we're trying to limit
More.
the hiccups. No, that's why there are no vendors. I already know Penny Lake already has all their paperwork into the village, so. I'm
They've
not-
got the insurance, they've got
Yeah,
all that
so I'm
stuff,
not
right?
worried
that-
about them.
Yeah, that you will need to get the, whoever's doing your AV is gonna have to have their insurance in,
Yes.
and, you know, from that perspective. I do think there will be some cost relative to DPW or the Parks Department, just, I do think there'll be some cleanup.
There,
right? So-
the biggest issue will be making sure, because I don't know that we will have, farmer's market gets there to set up early. If it's dirty and messy there, we will hear all about it. And farmer's market also, I believe, is part of the chamber. So it would be, you will need volunteers to be picking up after. I will talk to sanitation to make sure that bins are emptied, you know, so that we have or, you know, maybe we'll put out some extra bins. I can talk to sanitation about that so that we can make sure that people have places to put things.
I mean, I know that I've been on the board of Green Austin for like 10 years. I'm sort of, I wouldn't say vice chair, but I heavily involved with that. And I know every year I make announcements from the stage, please pick up, please put it. And I've been told by Mario and his crew that it's one of the cleanest events.
It was- it-
at
it was-
the
it was
thing. I
pretty-
can't
it was pretty
guarantee
clean,
that,
yeah.
but you know, I'm gonna go with the same, that if people are asked, they will pick up after.
Yeah,
themselves.
so to the specific questions at hand. I'm in agreement with those which have spoken, which is I'd like to see the permit fee not waived, right? Simply because of
The precedent,
everything
yeah.
we've been through before in the
Okay,
past.
I get that.
And totally understand that. I think I'm okay with a 1-year trial period on the parking piece, just to understand the implications and from that perspective, right? And obviously the timing is what the timing is, right? You know, if it is actually a level 1, then, you know, it's a non-issue from a timing standpoint, right? Which is why I'm okay with that from that standpoint.
More? I'm sorry.
Omar?
You should know before Omar speaks, you're a member of the chamber.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that also needs to be stated publicly. I
I
don't,
hope
we're
so.
voting on anything.
I am a member, so I was speaking totally, yeah, I should have disclosed that prior
Right,
to, so.
that's okay. It's there. Omar?
Hey, Rob.
Hey.
Hey, Greg. Good. So I agree with my colleagues. Yes, yes, no, with respect to the votes. So you have the bottom line. My 2 quick points. One, you mentioned businesses can get involved in whichever way they want, not at all or a lot, and still participate. I just wanted to get clarity. The document that you sent earlier around Restaurant Week, in what's involved, it says offer prefix menu, special dish, or exclusive deal for the week. So, is the idea that there is an offering, there is a thing, then if you're participating, it means something, or is it more of a kind of vote of confidence that they're showing in this event?
It's both. You see, nobody knows. I can't tell Dee Dee's how to run that. They know their business better than I know their business. So we're leaving it open to them. We're leaving it open to Juana. Juana wants to, you know, buy 3 empanadas, get 2 free, or whatever the case may be. We're leaving, or they just want to be listed. They just want to have a thing. We're trying to open this to everybody and let people see the possibilities, or let restaurants see the possibilities. I'm not going to tell, well, you have to do a special or you have to do a thing. Maybe, you know, their margins are different. I don't know. And I don't want to tell them they need to do something to be involved or not. That they have a restaurant in town or any sort of deli, or whatever, they know I'm not gonna tell them, they will make the determination how involved they want to be.
Okay, please, yeah, go ahead. I appreciate the inclusive nature of it. I think that makes sense. And from a consumer perspective, it's just a little bit confusing unless the language clarifies, like, we're highlighting all the businesses and they can do, and you kind of list out all the things that it may include, because in the restaurant weeks that I'm familiar with, it does tend to be more prescriptive of like, here are the restaurants that are included in restaurant week. And so if you go there, kind of what to expect. So I just don't want people to
Like you expect
misunderstand.
a special. and not
Exactly.
get it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you could certainly mark the restaurants that have specials. There are going to be links on the website to the restaurants if they want to put their specials up. You want to? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great point. And I have a really good answer for that. So other restaurant weeks often charge money, they're for profit, Westchester Magazine, it charges hundreds of dollars. The idea is that we're a chamber of commerce, we're a nonprofit, we're pointing people to businesses. One of the benefits that we're working on when we have support from our other chamber members, web developers, and whomever else, is not just to highlight what you're offering that's special for 1 week. We're highlighting what's special about your restaurant. We're going to make it completely searchable. So if somebody wants to know where the best outdoor dining is, that's going to be something you can search for. Is it kid friendly? Is there a kid's menu? We're going to make it searchable. So the idea that people can just list their business on there, they are getting a certain sort of benefit, that the community is getting educated to what they do and don't offer. So by making it searchable, even if they're not offering a special, I'm now learning, wow, that restaurant I've never been to has a phenomenal kids menu and my kid is ecstatic there. So that's the part of the reason why we're keeping it as broad as possible. Also, a lot of the feedback, we have spoken to more than 20 restaurants and another 20 or so non-restaurants, was they felt they had to cut portion sizes or do something else to sacrifice on quality, or they're dealing with, having to bring in extra staff and that costs their money. We don't want to do that. We want to highlight what's special about your restaurant, and the restaurants make that call. So hopefully that gives a little more clarity to how much work is going into the back end of this.
That is helpful. My second and last point slash question is, I appreciate sincerely that there is language that is both in English and in Spanish in order to try to attract some of our Spanish speaking business owners to participate. To me, this is year one. Let's kind of run, this is your thing and you run it how it will work for sure. In the future, where I see possibility is in helping to bridge some of the gap that exists with, you mentioned, for example, outdoor dining or kids, kids menus, things like that. Similarly, if I'm interested in what might be the best Peruvian restaurant for a date night, what might be the best, what are some of the most unique dishes, and having those Latino businesses be the ones that are able to offer those things that would attract people that don't usually go to those businesses. That's where, I think that there's something there.
I totally agree. And that's why we have several people that have volunteered to help us, that are fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, that are going to help us reach out to these restaurants that have really never been reached out to before.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. So I would first admit, there are at least a lot of restaurants I have never tried in this village that I am told are just phenomenal. So
I would say that if you could figure that out, using this as year like 0 and then, or year 1, that would be a huge advantage to this village. There are a lot of really wonderful mom and pop restaurants, some great food, buffet style stuff for families that can go, and they're growing, but they don't really have a wide reach. And I think this is like a two-way street. More people going to specialized restaurants and the businesses there feeling like they're more part of the community. That would be a huge win all the way around. I spoke a lot about bringing Briarcliff and Ossining together as a huge win, but I think this piece would be, for me, in Ossining, an even bigger win. So I think that would be a great metric
Oh, I
to
agree.
use. So we're appreciative of any efforts to bring everybody in together for that. Does anybody have any other comments? Because I think I don't think there's a vote here.
No,
but-
there's no vote. I was just gonna second what the deputy mayor said, because that was actually what I was bumping up to talk about, was the outreach to the Hispanic population, right?
Yeah,
So, and
that's
the restaurant
really,
specifically.
that's
That would be
been my
great.
goal since I'm on the chamber, to bring more, I mean, because so many of the Hispanic businesses feel, I don't know, detached from what's
Yeah.
going on, and I think that.
Yeah,
doesn't
I think
have to
that'll
be-
be, if
I
you
think
could break
that's our
through
strength.
that. Yeah, I think that'll be great. Or Craven Jamaican, which is a Caribbean, which I happen to personally love, but I don't see a lot of my neighbors there like grabbing food or whatever. I'm only naming, I mean, I'm sure there are others. Everybody's got their own stuff. I'm assuming places like McDonald's and all those places don't involve themselves in any of this stuff. So even though they're listed as restaurants, it's a shame because, we could go wide on this and they employ a lot of people. But I mean, the big win, those two big wins, that would be phenomenal. That would be a big thing. All right, I think we're done. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you come with asks and we've answered. And we have a long agenda, so unless there's something we didn't hit, not more of the same, but if we didn't hit, we're looking forward to it. I'll be going to the restaurants. Yeah, well, next month.
Again, thank you for your time.
Thanks for
All right,
coming in.
thank you so much. Keep in mind too, that, Bill will share our events that go on in Market Square, down at the riverfront. Those are opportunities for the chamber to, keep in mind, because Wednesday night, it's acoustic night typically in Market Square all summer. So
Yeah.
there's no reason why, restaurants can't capitalize on that as well, or in other stores. So just keep it in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Um,
Yeah, you can stay for the rest. of
we're
the
going to be
session.
discussing zoning, so you might
Wanna
want to
stay
stay.
Well, Greg likes zoning. actually.
He does.
Look,
Greg,
Look how excited he just got. Look, he's staying. Where's the clipboard? No?
Okay.
No writing?
all right. Well,
Uh,
Greg, we have another at least hour packed of fun for you.
Oh, you like this stuff.
So
Bye, Greg.
next up, everybody, we do have the next three agenda items really going to be led for the most part by our planning consultant, Valerie Monastra. The first item up on the agenda is T-zone recommendations. And if you remember, T-zones are single family with two family, but it's one and two families. I'm sorry. One and two families.
I always thought it's just for two, the T, but okay.
It is two family, but it is typically like one and two family. So
Okay.
I was getting a little off track there, but I tend to think of it as our, for a large part, it's our single family homes, two family homes, areas within the village, as opposed to the more dense multifamily
Okay.
areas. Anyway, with that, here is Valerie.
So Valerie, you're doing this one? What three things are you doing?
She's doing, we have planning board recommendations, specific to the moratorium and, tree preservation law revisions.
Okay.
Okay, good evening.
Hello.
So the T-zone tonight, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about, just to begin the conversation, or to just kind of get a green light from the board to start our little bit of investigations into the zoning district. I know we've had conversations in the past about potential changes to the T-zones, especially ones that were brought up as part of the comprehensive plan, and the board has decided to not pursue those. But one of the things that I wanted to bring to this board's attention is the fact that the T-zone district basically covers approximately 1,200 properties within the village of Ossining, and that's about 10.7% of your total land area. The only other zoning district that covers more property within the village of Ossining is the S75 zoning district. But the the important part with that is that because the T zones actually have more properties within the their zoning district than you have in the S75. And the S75, for those at home and also in the public, is single family, 7,500 square foot minimum lot area, where the T zones are also 7,500 minimum lot area, but you can have 2-family or 1-family homes as permitted uses. The reason I'm here this evening is that there are a number of properties within the T zones that we think need to be re-examined in terms of that they're either underdeveloped, meaning that they're much larger properties, and so that they would theoretically ultimately would be able to be subdivided, or and subdivided into potentially multiple lots, or they really just don't seem to fit those particular characteristics. And then there's also a number of properties that I'm going to say are underutilized, meaning that they're already developed, but they could be developed into additional units because of the properties themselves. Also, there are some neighborhoods or some properties where these T zones are located that maybe some of the properties should be really looked at in terms of do they really fall better in the conservation development district versus the T zones. And the reason why we're bringing this up now is because there's so many properties that fall within these T zones, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of people, or there's a lot of developers, a lot of real estate agents that are constantly calling, wanting to know what can be done in these zones. And this particular zone, you only allow for either single family or 2-family. And they have there's a couple conditional uses. It's either cemeteries, parking, education, places of worship, or senior living facilities, and that's it. So we'd like to kind of start exploring this a little bit more to try to make the T zone so that the properties that fall within the T zone really are realistic for what is the permitted uses, which is single family and 2-family. But then we also want to take a look at the conditional uses and really see if the conditional uses really fit the T zones, like things like, for example, like cemeteries or senior living facilities, etc. So that's really why I'm here tonight, is that we wanted to start exploring this a little bit more because of how much of land area the T zones take up and how little uses would be permitted under the T zone districts.
Comments? Well, as someone who lives in a T zone, can you give me an example of, I don't know, I'm trying to picture this. I'm just trying to picture.
So for
My neighborhood
example,
was-
here's an example on Snowden Avenue, there is a townhome complex. They're gray townhomes. It's right across it's right next to the Snowden Park.
Right.
So that whole townhome complex is in a T zone, but yet it's a townhome complex. So that's just one example of maybe that needs to be probably, but then right across the street from it is the Conservation Development District. Another example is that you might have, there are some properties that,
That
are
doesn't
larger
actually answer her
properties.
question. Valerie,
I'm sorry.
answer
Yes.
the question.
Well, she's giving some examples.
Right, but you're saying what you will look at, but what is it that you're looking for?
So we're looking
Is the point.
Yeah, so those are the kind of so we would be
What would you
looking at
do with those townhouse complex, for example?
So for example, that's like one property that we might want to consider recommending, maybe taking that property and making it into maybe the Conservation Development District, right? Which is right across the street from it. And that would technically be more in tune with what's actually developed there. Right. So we're not necessarily talking about, so in some cases, it's like there's a mismatch between the zoning district that it's assigned and actually what has been developed on that property.
Who decided townhouses could be built in a T zone? I mean, anyway, I'm just saying, sorry.
No, and that's the thing. Some of this is these T zones have been in existence for, I don't know, like at least 40, I think it's like 40 years. or more. I think in the 90s maybe, or actually I think it was even before the 90s when they started, when those areas were zoned. So there's quite a history to it, and it's not really clear. And so every time we've updated the zoning, because in 2009 when you updated the zoning and you updated it again, the village just kept carrying these T districts over. And I don't think there has really been like a little bit of a deeper dive into is the T district appropriately being applied to a number of these different properties. I'm not saying there's going to be a lot of changes, but this is something that we think we'd like to look at. And there are some properties that, you know, clearly are underdeveloped that could potentially be developed at some point. And would that, you know, would some of these conditional uses like cemeteries or senior living facilities really be applicable to those particular properties?
So how many hours of work is this going to be in consulting work?
No, it would be part of the retainer that we typically have with the village, and it would be part of our like 2025 like zoning. So it really wouldn't be many hours. I mean, I think we've already kind of have a general sense of some of the issues that we see, especially because of the fact that I also get phone calls from like real estate agents or insurance, you know, sometimes we get phone calls from like real estate agents where they ask, like, if this whole building burnt down to the ground, would it be able to be rebuilt? And the answer to that is no, because you're in a T zone and you can have a 1 family or 2 family, but somehow there was like, for example, the townhomes were built there.
Can't
So
you
the-
have
the-
3 family by if you, in the T zone, didn't we last year?
No.
You
No.
need a use variance
variance for three
and a use variance, the threshold for a use variance is
It's very
extremely
difficult.
difficult. So it is, you know, what Valerie's talking about is a challenge that we have throughout the village where we may have it may be a T zone, meaning that as of right, you can have a single or 2 family house, but there were many areas in the village where the predominant number of properties in that area are pre-existing non-conforming multifamily, legal multifamily as they are. The challenge is it creates a little bit of a challenge for people investing in properties, as well as for the example of something burns down and you can't rebuild what you had because you have to build something much smaller. So it is we're trying to do is right size, and the reason that it's important to right size and get this as consistent as possible, it allows for the best investment in the properties, and it does have an impact on your substandard housing, particularly in the multifamily area, because it's very, very hard to do any major renovations when you have multifamilies in a T zone without crossing the need for a use variance. And because these homes are old, they often do require changes that may be changing the footprint of the building. And it limits you to what you can do, and it makes it harder to improve the properties, to bring them in some cases. They may be grandfathered into certain codes, but certainly to bring them into health and safety standards based on current codes, things like that. So that really is the impetus for this. It's one of the issues that we deal with when we're dealing with how do we make sure that we have good, responsible investors, particularly in multifamily homes.
Okay. Any other questions? No, talk to Dana. Do you have any more?
No, I just want to make sure we don't do anything that substantially changes the character of
Right.
a neighborhood.
And that this doesn't beg for more development, rather, because forget about the fire. What about somebody just tearing something down?
Yeah, like somebody says, oh, I think I'll buy 3 houses on top of
And tear
Ellis
'em all
and tear
down.
them down and build.
But I
build
think that's
townhouses.
not the goal here,
That's
so.
not.
No.
No, it's to right size the neighborhood. So if the predominant number, you know, the predominant number of homes in the area actually are not conforming to the current zone, it's an indication that there's a zoning adjustment that can be made. That doesn't mean that you zone it for high density development or allows
Right.
villages or anything else. There's ways to sort of moderate how you do that so that you can bring things into a more consistent alignment, which is actually more in keeping with what is actually there now.
And even if we don't like what's there now, at least we're enabling somebody to say, if I wanted to take this down, not a whole building, but pieces, I can't right now because the minute I change things, I'm now required to go to an older way, even though it exists now. So people do things illegally or they cut corners. So this might enable, but you just have to be careful in weighing so that people don't purposefully create greater density, because surely I think we can all agree that this community is already very densely populated. But I think, I don't know the right word, but I think we've got most of the folks saying like, let's move forward on this. What's the next?
Okay.
All right, Valerie, I'm just going to let you plow ahead here, but
Okay.
we'll be talking about, we had talked about moratorium on certain types of development, particularly in the waterfront district. And the planning board did have some recommendations and input on that. So Valerie and Maddie can take us through that.
Yeah, sure. So this board asked the planning board for a recommendation as to whether would recommend a moratorium in the Riverfront Development District and the SPN, which is the which is Station Plaza North zoning district. So if this board recalls, the Riverfront Development District, the reason for the moratorium is to look at the residential uses that are technically conditional uses now in that zoning district, to potentially remove residential uses as a conditional use in those zoning districts, because the comprehensive plan really wants to move away from residential uses along those in that particular zoning district because of its the ability or the propensity to potentially flood. I just want the board to understand that Riverfront Development District right now, there's only one residential building in that Riverfront Development District, and that's Harbor Square. The rest of them are all properties that are either park or commercial properties. So this isn't really going to affect, and the moratorium is for new residential construction. So this is really not going to affect really any like potential developments or developments in the pipeline, but this is just to put a pause so that in case a particular property was to potentially consider trying to do residential development between now and when we make those changes, that this would not be allowed to process. The second is the Station Plaza North, which is, we've been talking about the zoning changes. We have another subcommittee meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks. We should be ready to bring something back to the board soon. And this is more or less, again, kind of that right sizing thing where right now it allows for just more or less like larger, denser apartment buildings, and we're looking to allow for single family, 2-family, like 3-family types of units to be built, which are more or less what's already existing there. So again, it's just kind of right sizing that zoning. So the planning board was in support of the moratoriums for both these zoning districts.
So the only comment I have is I've lived through a moratorium and the town did one years ago. And it didn't end up exactly the way they had planned in their meetings. So I want to be more educated. I spoke to Linda Whitehead, I wrote to her because I've asked her to come to some of our meetings because she has some knowledge. I haven't had a chance to sit with Stuart. I want to be more educated about moratoriums because they're not often used, but they're used often enough. It's one of those things, and it has this weird connotation. And some of you may know more about it, like you guys have Bob sat on zoning, planning, whatever. Others worked on the comprehensive plan, so that comes up. So Stuart, I'm gonna follow up.
Certainly.
Just to learn more, like to educate. I've Googled it. They go in different shapes and sizes.
It's very common in the state. You currently see them now with these battery energy storage systems. That is the most common one you're seeing now, where they're putting in moratoria. Upstate, you're seeing it with cryptocurrency in terms of basically the power that's needed, the computer facilities that are
The
needed.
facilities
They're
are
doing,
huge,
they're
yeah.
doing that. Other places in terms of certain types of housing. But the BESS systems are the most prevalent ones you're seeing down here. Mamaroneck has done that. Newcastle's done it. I believe Bedford just did it. Peekskill did it. So that's, and the moratorium lasts anywhere generally 6 months to a year. What they usually do is 6 months, and then they give themselves an out to add to it if they want
And
to go
that's the
beyond that.
maximum is 1 year.
It's not that, it's not, there's nothing in state law, but generally it really should not go more than a year.
Okay.
Because otherwise, and what most moratoria also have are provisions for if you have an exception, how could someone who wants to put that in do it even during the moratorium? And generally how that works is it would come back before this board to allow for the exception, because if you're putting the moratorium in place, you have to be the ones to lift it with regard to that.
And is communication an issue for the public or developers or?
Well, developers would be told, and part of the thing that this board would have to look at is, for example, the Bedford's local law, which was recently passed for the BESS systems, they make it clear that it's anything that is pending and anything that is new is basically stopped. All that can continue is what has already been approved.
Okay.
So even if it's before the board now, it would stop. In other places, basically, they're not going to stop what's already before the board, but they will stop anything new coming to
So
the
those
board.
are options we
So
have.
that's something you can look at.
And also the planning and zoning boards, I guess you see somebody trains them and explains all this to them.
Well, what
separately
would
from
happen
this.
is, Mayor, if I might, the application would never be accepted.
Got it.
The whole idea is it wouldn't even get to the boards because planning would be basically told, don't even take the application.
Okay.
In this case, though, I think it's important to understand too, for this really is the moratorium that we're talking about specific for Station Plaza, the waterfront, is in response to the community that lives there.
I understand.
You know, so it's a little bit different than the impetus for other, it really is very much, as far as the community standpoint, it really is in response to the community, particularly people who live in that area. And making sure, because we do have some uses that are currently permitted that we know are not uses that we
No,
would want to
I
see.
think it's important to state that, but the people that live there are not necessarily the people that own the properties. There's some of them do and some of them don't. And it's the property owners who may or may not live in that area. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But a part of the definition of community is also the owners who may or may not even live in those buildings, but they should be notified because they're investment. But I'm just interested, I've read about it. I may be making more of it than necessary. So we're good with going forward. I'm getting body language says good. And you guys, Stuart, you might want to look at the agenda because I think it's an intense evening. We may not make it to all of the issues. We might want to hold off on a couple if possible. But meanwhile, we got Valerie on this. So we good on this? Everybody? Yeah? Good? All right, Valerie, next.
Yes. All right. So the last is the tree law. So last time we were in front of this board, the board, specifically trustee Yost, wanted to work on the text of the local law to make it a little bit more clear on when a permit is needed and what is the permit process. So our office, along with Corporation Counsel, Stuart Gahan, trustee Yost, and the EAC have been working collectively to work together to modify the local law for clarity. So part of it was like creating a table for when a permit is required and also clarifying the terms, and then also making sure the permit process was clear and understandable. So I think at this point, this local law is ready potentially for a public hearing on the new tree regulations. I mean, I'm happy to go through the details again if you'd like. But we have presented it a couple of times before the board, and I know
No,
it's
understood.
late.
It's just the language. You good? Pat said he was good because I spoke to him. You good? Dana, you need another minute to look at it? No, I looked at it. I think most of us are actually okay, so I think we're gonna move on that. Thank
All
you.
right. That was it.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks, Valerie.
Valerie,
Yes.
we only have one more agenda item and that's,
Oh.
tax certiorari
you're right.
matters, for 1516 James Street and 6668 Croton Avenue.
Thank you, Karen. With regard to 1516 James Street, the total tax certiorari settlement on behalf of the village is approximately $36,000. These are for tax years 2020 through 2025. For 66-68 Croton Avenue, tax years 2018 to 2025, the tax certiorari settlement is $19,992.84. And we have one additional one, which is a SCAR or Small Claims Assessment Review Proceeding involving 3 Navajo Lane, and the SCAR refund there, which is for just the 2025 tax year, would be $144.90.
First one seemed high. It's unusually high, but what do I know? Thoughts?
If I might, May, when you say unusually high, just
It's
a few
many
points.
years,
It's
yeah.
multiple, it's
many
multiple years,
yeah.
as are both of them.
Right.
So it's,
Understood.
that
I mean, we've done
accounts for
pretty
it.
well with certiorieries. We've done actually pretty well. The assessments have come in. Anybody? Everybody's okay?
So these would be resolutions next
Yep.
week to approve.
Sounds good. Karen?
That concludes tonight's agenda.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. 10:25. I thank everybody. Oh, where's my hammer? No hammer. I'm missing my hammer. Cute. Anyway, thank you, everybody. 10:25. This concludes a very exciting meeting with lots of different issues that have come up. And I thank everybody for their patience and time, and we'll see everybody next week at a legislative session. Have a good evening.